OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, bang on 7:30 this Thursday morning. We have tennis, we have rugby, we have football, transfer tittle-tattle, we've got golf, we've got everything you want of a Thursday morning, including the inimitable Johnny Ward with us in the studio. Johnny, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ger. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. What's going on?
Busy week for Irish football. Tallow was very good. Tuesday night, over 7,000 people watched Shamrock Rovers. Guaranteeing action, I think, into August. I think for the brand of the League of Ireland, the viewing figures were good. We often moan about that RT should show more League of Ireland. I think it kind of turns out that when they show European games, there's far more of an interest than domestic stuff. And I think that was borne out with very good figures on Tuesday night. And I think people do take a big interest, even if they're not necessarily League of Ireland fans.
Yeah, I think that there's a bit of chicken and egg. If they were to put a bit more time and effort into showing the games, and more people would be interested because they'd know more of the players and they'd get more of the storylines. And it's kind of definitely, I think that
there is an element of that as well.
Yeah.
But I've kind of I've been talking to people in TG Car to see could they look into it as well. I think it shouldn't all be about the national broadcaster, because
you're basically John the Baptist for the league.
Well, it needs one.
It needs a messiah to come after you. You end up beheaded, but for the good of the game, you'd be willing to lay down your life, right?
Yeah, I mean, you don't get rich being a League of Ireland journalist, to be fair. But I've always felt that the League of Ireland is kind of like Kurt Cobain said, he really loved becoming famous, but he hated being famous. And I think if the League of Ireland ever got really good, we'd actually pine for the days when it was
You would.
When it was this is our league, go home, Yank, kind of vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's always a bit strange when there's massive interest, and you go to Shamrock Rovers games now, it's regularly 7,000 people there. So it is becoming a thing in Tala that a lot of the locals go and watch Shamrock Rovers, and it's a nice stadium and the quality of the football is really good. So it kind of is the best of the League of Ireland.
And tonight's big night?
Yeah, it's the Conference League. Derry City are in playing at home against Riga. So it's Rory Higgins' first sort of shot at European football. Big night for them. And Sligo Rovers go to Bala Town. It's a tiny little town on the Welsh-English border. And the carrot for them is to play Motherwell in the next round, which would be a great tie, and they'd have a chance in. The mass, I think 400 Sligo fans have gone over. Ground holds 1,000, so it'll almost be like a home game, and they should get the job done. First leg tonight in Wales.
No pressure. Okay.
Yeah.
The Ireland rugby team was named overnight. Hugo Keenan starts at full back. Mac Hansen comes in on the wing, and James Lowe's on the other wing. That means Keith Earls is out of the matchday squad. It's Robbie Henshaw and Gary Ringrose in the centres. It is Jamison Gibson Park at 9, and Johnny Sexton is captaining the team from 10. In the pack, Andrew Porter, Dan Sheehan, Tyke Furlong is the front row. Tyke Byrne and James Ryan are in the second row. In the back row, unchanged, Peter O'Mahony, Josh van der Fleer and Keelan Doris. And Keelan Doris is actually the picture that they've chosen to illustrate the matchday team with. So no pressure there. We're putting you out front and centre, and we're reminding everybody that from the bench, Jack Conan looked much better than you last week, Keelan. So a bit of pressure, and you're the one that they choose to illustrate the picture with. The bench is a little bit stronger this week. Rob Herring, Cian Healy, Finlay Beelum are the front row subs. Kieran Treadwell keeps his position. Jack Conan, Conor Murray, Joey Carberry and Bundy Aki is on the bench for that one. We'll get Alan Quinlan's thoughts on the team in about 10 minutes time. I guess the point is that they're going for it again. There's no risks being taken with this team. It's we are desperate for victory here. Yeah,
I guess they got to learn from the mistakes after a good start the last day, and I think the out-half thing for me is still fascinating from somebody who kind of doesn't follow rugby day to day, that they are desperate for Sexton to start again and just don't seem to have an answer if he's not playing, because he's had so many problems, and I just see it seems a strange indictment of rugby in Ireland that we can't seem to find a solid alternative to Sexton. And I don't know, is that to do with Carberry's struggles at Munster or whatever, but it'd be interesting to hear what Quinny says on that, because I grimace when I see the problems that Sexton has had on the pitch and the fact that he's still playing all the time.
Yeah, I mean, they've been unfortunate. Events have conspired
against them
to prevent their natural successor from being unavailable for selection. We could put it that way. And then after that, there's a bunch of kids who are coming through who can't get any game time because the incumbent is still there and needs to play whenever the big games are on because they want to win. So it's I don't know. We were idly speculating years ago that they should have bought London Irish and had a team in the Premiership, and then I mean, not to talk about the war again, but they would then have the opportunity to play more players in that position.
Yeah.
But it hasn't happened. So we'll get Quinny's thoughts on the team itself. You can drop your comments on the YouTube stream. You can tweet us at Off the Ball AM, or of course you can text us 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Right, I think we're ready to talk some tennis. Are we? We are.
We are.
Yeah.
Ger, Johnny.
I was wondering what you were doing here, actually. Yeah.
Colin Bowie, good morning.
Yeah.
I could produce from here.
To our radio listeners.
be a thing
and
we
then
start doing.
when you're shouting at us from behind the glass, we hear you.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Then I can't shout it to you in your ear,
Well, you
which I know you like me doing.
You could. I mean, I don't mind it. It's kind of one of the. You're supposed to be able to listen to stuff in your ear and also talk at the same time. That's the gig, Colin.
Did you find like the radio slot more difficult when the TV cameras, like when you were being videoed? Did it change the dynamic for you?
You couldn't pick your nose anymore. Is that what you're talking about?
It's just the all-seeing eye. It's that like it is a different dynamic. It's like, and people will pick up on whatever, picking your nose or stuff like that, or just like, I don't know, looking tired or whatever. It changed the dynamic, even though it's effectively the same thing. Like there's no real difference.
No, it's true. You're more on and you're less free. You're conscious of two things then: how you sound and how you look.
This is it, yeah.
Wimbledon's been good.
Huh?
Wimbledon's been good.
What happened in Wimbledon anyway?
What's not happening, Johnny, will be quicker. So it's been very, very competitive. Like Nick Kyrgios, we thought his ship had sailed for doing anything major in a Grand Slam, and here he is in his first ever Grand Slam semi-final, 7.5 years after reaching his last quarter-final in a Grand Slam. And he did it the hard way as usual, even though he won in straight sets yesterday against Christian Garin. That really should have gone to a fourth. That went to a third set tie break. Garin is playing the better tennis towards the end, and yet Kyrgios won in straight sets.
How is the crowd in terms of when he's playing?
Well, it's interesting. Well, that was back to court 1, which is a preferred court. He's not a big fan at centre. He played centre the other day against Brandon Nakashima of America, and he was a bit flat for the whole match. It's a bit more sedate on centre court and more lively in court 1. And they were kind of riling him up at times. And one guy actually towards the end of the third set, Kyrgios is about to serve, and this guy from the crowd goes, "Do the underarm." Like he's some sort of circus freak, and he just ignored it and did a normal serve. But funnily enough, it's Kyrgios serving it's what's got him to the last 4. Like Djokovic actually said, like his great friend Novak Djokovic said, he's the best server in the game, and he is. And what he does is that he actually misses quite a few first serves, but his second serve is pretty much just as good. He's the best second server since Pete Sampras. He's hitting 120 to 125 kilometres second serve aces. Just totally brave, and doing it at like 30, 40 points. Really, like I'm not talking like 15 love 15. I'm talking like the business end of each game. He doesn't care. Like he's happy to do the serving.
But I find rate much different then on the second serve. He has about 115 aces at Wimbledon, and he has double figures aces for second serves, which is phenomenal.
Wow.
I mean, you might get 1 or 2 per tournament, and he's in double figures. But what I'm finding in the last 2 matches against Garin and Nakashima is, if the opponent returns his serve and the longer the rally goes on, he actually begins to struggle and goes on the back foot. So what will be really fascinating to see now is in the semi-final against Rafael Nadal, if he can sustain his really impressive serving, and then what he can do in the rallies. Because of course, if anybody was watching yesterday, Nadal against Taylor Fritz nearly retired injured twice. And actually at one point his dad Sebastian was frantically waving in the box, in the family box, being like, he was gesturing to quit. He was shake hands, retire. So Nadal ignored it, and then for the rest of the match refused to look at him.
Always ignore your father.
Shut up, Dad.
Yeah, I was chatting with Emma Carroll earlier, and she was like exactly that. It was like, you never stop being the child to your father, and Nadal just ignored him for the rest of the match because he really wanted him to retire. And because, you know, like his dad's thinking, like, you've done it all. You've literally won the most Grand Slams ever.
No.
You should retire. You should walk away. And then Nadal was like, just like you, Ger.
The Grand Slam is on this year.
Just like you, he was like, no, I'm not retiring. But I really thought halfway through the second set, took off his bandana, or his headband, sorry. And bandana would be good, actually, for that. Headband, took it off, got up, and I thought, oh, he's going to shake his hand. He's going to finish it. It's going to be a Fritz Kyrgios semi-final. And then he just, no, I'm just going to have to get treatment. And he came back. And then the medic who was working with him was talking with him, and you just couldn't quite make it out. One thing's really annoying in this Wimbledon is that the BBC commentators keep on talking over the players when they're chatting, and you can hear them, so you just can't quite hear what they're saying.
Generally Andrew Castle, isn't it?
Yeah, Andrew Castle, yeah.
He's the one
That's
who's
a big
like,
problem there. Shut up for a second, trying to hear what they're saying. This is way more interesting. You just can't quite hear what they're saying. And I thought the medic was saying to Nadal, what do you want to do? And Nadal was saying, I'll leave it a few minutes. But he was grimacing, and that was midway through the second set. I thought he was gone.
Do you remember when even Eastwick went up to his dad after he won a Wimbledon, and it was like, that would absolutely melt you.
That was we thought that length about that match last year because it was the 20th anniversary, and that was even Eastwick's.
He was like a wild card, wasn't he?
Yeah, first wild card to win Wimbledon, his 4th Wimbledon final, and his dad saying afterwards that he thought he was going to have a heart attack towards the end of that last game with Pat Rafter. And they showed the camera pan to his dad. I'll never forget that. And his dad.
Welling up right now thinking of it.
It's amazing. I'd advise anyone to go down a YouTube hole this morning if you want to procrastinate or whatever you're doing in your life and watch that.
If they're listening to us, Colin, they're already procrastinating. We know that.
The heart pounds watching it. If you're made of stone, it might melt you a little bit. It's a beautiful moment. But for this Wimbledon, we could see an equally emotional moment if someone like Kyrgios reached the final, considering he was pretty much ruled out of contention for anything major because he just doesn't have the commitment to the game. He's a part-time player.
He just lives a normal life as best he can.
Well, he lives a normal life, but he's saying, the one thing that he's done this year is basically caught himself on a bit in terms of his preparation towards professionalism. I mean, he was saying recently as the 2019 Australian Open, he had suicidal thoughts, and he posted that on Instagram a couple of months ago, and there was pictures of him from that tournament, and he said, if you look closely, you can see in my wrist there's self-harm evidence. That was only 3.5 years ago, and I remember that. And actually, he played Nadal at that Wimbledon 3 years ago, and the night before he was in the local pub until 4 a.m. That's ratified by loads of journalists who were there. He said himself in the post-match press conference that day, and he was like, look, I was in the pub till 4 this morning, and I think he took a set off Nadal that day, or maybe he lost the straights. I don't quite remember, but he did give him a bit of a game considering he was on the tear the night before. And so this is his first time playing Nadal since then. But he's beaten Adare at Wimbledon before, 2014 in the 4th round.
They were saying that there's no love lost between them, but then they didn't go into any details in the commentary yesterday.
Yeah. Well, in 2019 when they played, there was one moment where, remember when Tsitsipas hit the ball a few times at Kyrgios last Saturday night? Yeah. Well, Kyrgios did the same to Nadal, and of course, Kyrgios was in a terrible state of mind at the time, as we've learned subsequently, and he tried to hit Nadal at the net in that match 3 years ago, and Nadal looked at him glaringly. What are you doing? And he just, Kyrgios is the antithesis to everything that Nadal does in his approach to the game. He's so meticulous. The water bottles have to be facing out so everyone can see the label. He has all these twitches, which people will be well aware of if they've seen any Nadal match when he's serving. Hair behind the ears, he's twitching, he's touching everything. It's part of his process. Whereas Kyrgios can either bounce the ball 25 times or not bounce it at all and hit a serve. He'll just change it up all the time. So that organisation and structure that Nadal has would absolutely wreck Kyrgios' head. But what he said in yesterday's press conference was that we both have the utmost of respect for each other. Now, that was Kyrgios saying it. Nadal would probably say it publicly. I'm not sure what he thinks privately. But what was funny was Kyrgios said that this match, the semi-final, which will be happening tomorrow, his opinion will be the most watched tennis match of all time. Wow. Kyrgios is saying.
Right.
It's quite the statement for a semi-final.
You might be right, though, because it depends what time is it the second one?
Yeah, they've confirmed that, but it should be the second one, yeah.
Which means that there'll be
they have less
American
time
audience.
than the other, which is Novak Djokovic against Cam Norrie.
Which will be over in straight sets, right?
I'd imagine so. It's nice for Britain to have a semi-finalist again, especially Andy Murray got knocked out early. Nice thing about Cam Norrie, you like this, big cyclist, big into his environment, lives around the corner from Wimbledon, cycles to Wimbledon every day.
That's
and
class.
Back. Every other player gets a lift and gets into an official car. He cycles to the match, comes back afterwards.
He's one of your guys, Johnny. He wants to save the planet.
I saw one of these really inspiring little videos on Twitter yesterday, which just come up as if to say this will make you happy if you watch enough of these, where they had two kind of quite heavy little balls, one going kind of a very flat track across this little bit of metal, and the other one going up and down like this. And basically, the one that went up and down, with the little hills, moved faster because it was heavy and there was more gravity when it came down. First of all, and it was if you go through the up and downs in life, you will actually travel further. And I was like, well, this is nonsense. And if you cycle, that's absolute rubbish because hills make you far, far slower. And then you start thinking I notice the weather now all the time because I'm what's the wind? And to my mind, and I'm interested what people think of this, is it getting far windier in Ireland or is it just me? Is that just a cycling thing?
You have become aware of it.
Because 90% of the time you cycle now, it's windy. And that's just in Dublin. Like, imagine what it's like in Kerry. Is that just me, or is it windier? A lot windier in Ireland now. I do not know.
This is the
Texas in.
This is the Johnny Ward equivalent of live, laugh, love. It's,
We've had I
enjoy.
Climate change is bad, but we could do with a bit of warmth. It's been bad summer.
I do enjoy these digressions because we talked about Djokovic and Nari there, and then I put my head down on the laptop just to read a few things, and then I put it back up, and I heard it's really windy in Dublin at the moment to cycle. And that's what I love about Stop at the Show.
Yeah,
we're with it. Anyway,
but I think it makes you fitter because it's such a pain. Like the wind, it just makes everything more difficult. But I'll be up for him against Djokovic as much as obviously it's going to be a tough one. He's still not taking the vax, is he?
No.
Okay.
No, that's not going to change now. He's not. I mean, imagine he took it now after all that. It was okay, fine, I'll take it. So actually, at the time of speaking, he's not going to be allowed to play the US Open.
Interesting.
This is all the more reason for Nadal to not give up. So Nadal could win the calendar Grand Slam with 2 more matches here, and then he would.
I know. Would that be amazing?
You know, he'd be favourite.
But at the same time, if Djokovic is somehow allowed to play the US Open, they could be level. Nadal might not play this match against Kyrgios.
That's the
he
other
has to have a
thing.
scan today.
Yeah. So I think he will, right? I think he's.
I would be shocked if he pulled out.
Yeah.
Absolutely shocked.
But there's a bit of drama about it,
Yeah. But if there's a tear in his abdomen, he's not going to be able to play. Like he was serving at about 99 kilometres against Fritz. Like how Fritz didn't win that match. Like Fritz is a good player. He actually beat him in the Indian Wells final earlier this year. Fritz, 24-year-old from America, really good player, but ravaged with injuries as well. Funnily enough. But it's kind of have a bit of fitness going now, and it's the first time he's been consistently fit in a long time, and he's showing his talent. Should have beaten him. How he lost, I don't know. But hopefully Nadal actually takes to the court here against Kyrgios. But never will Kyrgios have a better chance of winning a Grand Slam ever. Absolutely guaranteed. It's a weak field as it is this year.
What's the story with semi-finalists who was competing for Russia and then changed to Kazakhstan?
Oh, Alina Rybakina.
So she's through the semi-final. Halep is through from yesterday as well, which I saw some of.
She would say she's from Kazakhstan. She's Kazakh, so she can play because that's exactly it. If you're not Russian or Belarusian officially, you're allowed to play this Wimbledons. That's all.
I find that absolutely bizarre. I know. So bizarre.
Who's going to win the women's?
I would say Simona Halep will beat Ons Jabeur in the final.
Okay.
I think so.
All right, which I think was predicted this time last week, was it?
By Jenny Claffey, who beat Ons Jabeur 6-love.
Well,
we should have backed that. We didn't, but we should have. There you go. One of the many things that has happened on the show that we were like, oh, that's interesting, and then not acted on. 7:47 this morning, you're watching OTB AM. We're live each morning in association with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Alan Quinlan standing by, going to talk to us about the Ireland team for New Zealand. We're going to talk about Munster's Esports with Enda, Lynch and Daire McCormack. Sports page is coming your way at 8:25. John Duggan with Virtual Insanity at 8:35. Lee Keegan is going to join us at 8:50, and Ger Brennan is going to join us at 9:10 to preview the weekend's Gaelic football action. There are 2 big games this weekend.
A lot of big names this week on OTB AM.
And Johnny Ward.
Lee Keegan, German O'Sullivan. It's all kicking off.
At 7:48 though.
Lee will be delighted now. I wrote a piece about him in the match programme at the weekend, just kind of trying to read into him and McLaughlin having their kids in the pitch after the game, and the handshake photo where the Kerry jersey turned inside out, and Lee Keegan is it's a pleasure to talk to him. He's possibly one of the greatest footballers of all time, arguably. Greatest defenders, I would say.
Definitely right there. Mossy Quinn said on the show a couple of weeks ago that he was the greatest Mayo player of all time. So we can put these to him. Irish people love compliments.
We actually love it. Love compliments.
Yeah. Right, tune into Off the Ball each day this week, where thanks to Sport Ireland Campus we have daily prizes of €200 vouchers that can be used towards membership at their elite gym facility and pitch rentals for your team, kids sports academies and camps, or a family visit to the Aquazone Water Park. There's also an amazing overall prize, a €1,000 voucher, a money can't buy behind the scenes tour, and a sports team fitness testing session by an experienced strength and conditioning coach. It's all with thanks to Sport Ireland Campus, the home of Irish sport, from beginners to high performance and everyone in between. Here we go. That's the hashtag. Here we go. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you. Good evening to you. How are you?
I'm good, lads, and yourselves?
Yeah, good. The Ireland team has been named, if anybody missed it. Mac Hansen comes in for Keith Earls, and really that's the only change. There's a few changes on the bench. Rob Herring comes in, Finlay Bealham is on the bench as well, but they've decided to double down. They went for it last week with their strongest team, and they've decided that they're going to try and learn the lessons from last week and win a test. Is it the right call, do you think? Should there have been some experimentation here?
No, I think it's the right call, and maybe I'm being a bit not being very, very ambitious in making all these changes. But I just think that I think the reason here, Ger, is because when they reviewed the game and they looked at the stats and particularly the early start in the game, I believe that they feel they can make that last for longer. And I think that's why they've gone with pretty much the same group. Just one chair change. It's a bit hard on Keith Earls, but I think Mac Hansen probably coming into the tour was in pretty good form and was probably going to be selected for that first test anyway. So, yeah, I think they've gone for a bit of continuity and try and win this test and hope that they can turn the superiority of possession and territory into more scores and maybe fix the problems that they had last Saturday. It's easier said than done. I was in the team hotel just a short while ago and they announced the team, and again, it's hard to, Andy Farrell was asked the question about body language and was it good this week? And he said that he's been in different teams, played in different teams, and I can relate to what he's saying, where the body language has been brilliant and the team have been buzzing, and then it goes pear-shaped in a match on Saturday. And the opposite, when it hasn't been very good and there's been a bit of poor training, that the performance can be brilliant. So it's hard to read that, but he did say that they train really well and they seem to be they're kind of full of belief that they can be better and make a real go of it on Saturday.
It's definitely, it's not risky, right? Because maybe it is very risky, because if you get beaten again with your best team, then you realise that, oh my God, we're absolutely miles and miles and miles away from being able to compete in a World Cup quarter final. But we had Derek McNamara on during the week. He had crunched the numbers and the stats, and he was more glass half full than glass half empty after myself and Owen had been talking about it during the week as well. So I suppose if you're the Ireland management team, you think, well, we did have possession. Before Sexton went off, we were in control of the game. Before Sexton got injured, we were in control of the game in many ways. And so if Sexton plays the full game, or 70 minutes of it, whatever, and we have that level of control for those 70 minutes, then it's going to be much tighter. And, if we don't give them 28 points, well, then the scoreboard is going to be much closer as well.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of ifs and buts there. And I chatted to Josh van der Fleer. I interviewed him a while ago, and I kind of put that to him that, when you play New Zealand, what's the difference between playing them here or playing them at home? And it's hard to pinpoint. There's a ruthlessness that's always there with them. And I think, and I've kind of referenced this already chatting to you last week, that, if you go back to the games that Ireland beat them, they seem to be very ambitious, very accurate for long, long periods of the game. Of course, you're always going to make some mistakes, but that 10-minute period, and of all the teams in World Rugby, they're probably the team that punish you the most if you make mistakes and if they get their tails up. And they're in a bit of a rebuilding process themselves. That's 7 changes from the team that played last November. A lot of familiar faces, but they're very, very ruthless in what they do. And I think if you make wholesale changes, then you risk, it's risk reward. If it works, it's loads of energy, loads of enthusiasm, new guys in, and, they bring that energy. I think the continuity piece is, particularly when you're looking at reviewing the game and you look at little moments and things that you could have done differently. And I highlighted them on Monday, the quick penalty from Gibson Park, maybe breaking out from the maul, a couple of kicks that probably should have went into touch. And they lost control at that period. And as I said, of all the teams, historically, they will punish you severely if you make mistakes. So it's a kind of a catch-22, because you do want to develop a bit of depth. And you do want to go to the World Cup in France next year, ideally, and be able to win the big matches and have brought through more guys that can step up to the plate. But it makes for a really interesting one. They've kind of gone with the same selection as well, and the challenge here and the question here, Ger, is will they get better as well? I think Ireland will be better, and I still think they will learn from some of their mistakes, but the chances are New Zealand are going to be better as well.
More than likely they will. And traditionally, with Gregor Paul on, he said that the third test in these opening test series for New Zealand is when they put in their best performances, and he referenced the 16-0. I do think the 16-0 is like a bit of a red herring, given that we had a sending off so early in the game, and that completely skewed it, and heads went straight away when that happened. But if they continue to improve, like, you would still make them very strong favourites for this game at the weekend. But we do expect a much crisper, controlled performance from Ireland.
Yeah, and I think they believe. Look, they have to try and believe, but I genuinely think they believe that if they can kind of sustain what they did in the first 20 minutes for a longer period, there's no way you're going to be able to do that for 80 minutes. But you've just got to be sharp and really limit the mistakes and hope that you get a little bit of flow and momentum. And I think they'll try and do the same, whether they can break down New Zealand again at the weekend, and particularly, I suppose, what happened in the second half. But it's going to be very, very difficult. They've Sam Whitelock is out for them. He'll certainly be a loss. Scott Barrett, goes into the second row, and Papali'i comes into the back row. It doesn't really weaken them. They've made a couple of changes on the bench as well, but it's a very, very difficult task. It always was before this tour. But I think really you would hope that Ireland will be able to control the tempo a little bit better. And the key part of their attack in recent years, when they've been successful, is their set piece has been pretty solid. So they can't afford to have a creak in scrum this week. They can't afford to lose 4 lineouts. If they want to win this game, I think they're the small things and small details that are going to be really important. And dare I say, they've got to be really physical, because the collisions at the breakdown, probably in a few crucial moments, they lost them after, again, in that first 20 minutes, they had some brilliant turnovers. Tyke Byrne had one, Peter O'Mahony had one. They isolated New Zealand a little bit. So they've got to get a lot right this week, but I think they believe they can. And Andy Farrell was asked about the pressure, and he's kind of the type of character that you would always think, and he played like that as a rugby league player, that loved the challenge. And I love the fact at the press conference that he was saying, look, we want this pressure because we want to test the characters of our players. We want to see how far they can go. We want to see had they got the stomach for it. And they were his exact words. And that's the challenge, really. They've got to step up this week, and aside from getting their game right, they have to really kind of have a bit of mental fortitude and a bit of aggression and anger with them this week, and really hope that they can front up and they get some of the 50-50 calls maybe that went against them last week. They weren't the deciding factor. I think there was some, the Sevu Reece try just kind of turned the whole momentum. They have to create some momentum shifters this week themselves. And I think if they can get into the 50th, 60th minute, either ahead or, close to New Zealand, I think they'll be in a really, really strong position. Sounds very obvious, doesn't it? But I think if they can stay in the game past half time this week, I think they'll really believe, and maybe they'll create a little bit of doubt. But, on one hand, then you think, well, New Zealand will get better and they'll be tails up, and they can be devastating.
Let me ask you, right? So Andy Farrell says he wants the team to be under this pressure and to see if they respond, and it's a test of character for them. What if they fail that test of character? What if it's another 46-12?
Yeah, if they fail that, well, we'll have to analyse the game and see where it went wrong and decide if the players actually have the stomach for it. Are some players, should they be on the team? Should we make changes? Like, it's the wrong time to really kind of start breaking the team completely apart. We have to realise, Ger, and look, you know this yourself, that the New Zealanders are capable of we don't know how good this All Black team is at the moment. We know there's a lot of excellent players on the team. They've probably had an up and down kind of period since the World Cup. South Africa have had a fair bit of dominance against them. We've beaten them. Australia, I think possibly Argentina, maybe during COVID, got a victory in Australia. So they've shown some vulnerability, and the pressure that was on them last week was immense. The pressure that's on Ian Foster, the coach. So if Ireland fail here and get a big beating, if you like, well, is it back to the drawing board? What do? You know, it's not as if we have 10 players at home.
I was going to say, there's not much that, and for me, that's the risk.
There's not a lot we can do, yeah.
Well, that's the risk in picking your best team. You pick your best team last week, okay, fair enough. You want to get out the whole thing off to a really good start. They get hammered. You pick your best team again the second week. If they get hammered again, it is definitely, okay, what do we do now? Because there isn't, the team who played the Maoris.
It depends what like. They were beaten by, was it 22 or 3 points last week, 42-19. It should have been closer. I think the score flattered a little bit. Now, look,
the score always flatters a little bit, though. Like the World Cup quarter-final in Japan, maybe if we hadn't... But it wasn't. It was that... Look, I think we're clinging on to the period of before half-time, and I think Ireland... It wasn't as if they were unbelievably dominant the whole game. I think when you look at it, of course there was mistakes, and I thought the New Zealand tries were they didn't have to work very hard for them. Of course, if you kind of have a really, really disappointing performance, you're well beaten, well, it's going to be a hard one to take, and it'll be very hard to pick themselves up for a third test. And I think he'll have no choice but kind of make some changes then, and see what the players can do. Gavin Coombs maybe come in. It's a pity. It's a pity that Ronan Keller isn't here. I think he's such a good player. It would have been brilliant to see him here and have Dan Sheehan coming off the bench. Henderson's a loss. We don't have the same pool or depth of players that they have. And honestly, I drove from Queenstown today to Dunedin, and I must have passed 50 rugby pitches in schools in a 3-hour journey, and kids out playing rugby. It's just it's hard to put it into context how passionate and how important rugby is here, and given the amount of players they have here, if we had anywhere near the same depth, it would be incredible. But look, that's why it makes it such a difficult task, and that's why they've been near top of the pile forever, the All Blacks. So
why is it so different, like, to play there compared to like in Ireland? Like if Ireland's soccer team played New Zealand in New Zealand, you wouldn't think it made much of a difference at all. Like the climate isn't much different. What is it like? Why is it so difficult to win there?
I just think that Johnny, it's a good question, and there's always this intrigue in sport about home and away. And when I played for Munster, when one of the big goals we had at the start was win in France for the first time, be the first Irish team to win in France. We did it. And then you start to say, well, why can't we do this more regularly? And then other teams started doing it. But, it's a different environment. It's a different dressing room, the travel, the crowd, the referees get swayed. And you start adding all those little points together, and, they create a different environment for you. And I think there's so much pressure on New Zealand every time they put on the jersey, but particularly at home. They get absolutely slated here if they lose a test match. If they lost last week and Ireland beat them, they'd be calling for the head coach, the captain, wholesale changes in the team. So it's like a religion here, really. It's like our GA, really, at home. It's just everywhere you go, you see people with rugby balls, and you drive through the small towns, and it's just so passionate. So I think they feel more responsibility at home here. Like, they seldom lose away from home either, but they very, very rarely lose at home, and it's just like a religion here to them.
You said about the officiating, is that, like, I think Tyke Byrne was quoted after the game and saying he can't figure out some of the decisions, like, from the first test. Is that an issue at all for Ireland, or?
A little bit. I think there was issues at the breakdown that weren't picked up. There was a Scott Barrett clear out on Peter O'Mahony, which is baffling that he wasn't cited.
That doesn't make any sense, does it?
It makes no sense. And World Rugby should really come out and answer what the situation is here. It's a clear clip of Scott Barrett hitting Peter O'Mahony with his shoulder in the back of the head, neck area. And the referee said it was in the chest, and you could hear Peter O'Mahony arguing the point afterwards. He's not cited for it. It's not highlighted anywhere. There's no real replays here because New Zealand, the coverage, the control by the director at the match, and all those pictures are controlled by Sky Sports in New Zealand. And I'm not criticising them, but I'm just saying it's kind of swept under the carpet and it's just, let's move on and there's no issue here. If that was in the Northern Hemisphere, Ger, it's a red card and it's a suspension. And how it's not even mentioned or clarified afterwards or during the week. Like it was a clear shoulder into the back of Peter O'Mahony's head and neck. Yeah. And like, look, thankfully he wasn't injured. It wasn't that forceful. But if that was in the Northern Hemisphere, it's a red card. So look, I'm talking about some of the refereeing decisions. They weren't the deciding factor here because I think New Zealand were just ruthless at a few really, really crucial moments, and they can do that to anyone. But I just thought, and the penalty count, Ireland, New Zealand were 14 penalties, Ireland were 10. So, but a lot of those penalties were late on. Yeah,
and the yellow card was pointless because it was at the end. Whereas actually, if there'd been an early yellow card for either team, then we might have had a sense of, okay, the rules are being... It's funny because it was obviously a Northern Hemisphere referee. Like, I don't know, is there an overcorrection?
Yeah,
when you go down,
and I just think there was no... from the two assistant referees, very little intervention, bar calling a few offsides. The TMO was silent the whole game. I just can't understand why he doesn't go back and say to Carl Dixon, look, we got to check this, it's shoulder to head. Yeah. Let's at least review it.
Stick it on the big screen so that everybody can see it, you know?
So some of the entries into the rucks, the side clear-outs, I think Andrew Porter's about to score a try. Sam Whitelock just drives straight in from the side on the goal line. Again, Ireland wouldn't have won the game, I don't think, but it would have been a lot closer. And
well, it's not even about that. It then prevents that from happening this week. That's the main thing, is that, like, as we saw, Raz's video stopped everything from happening week 2, and that's the whole point of trying to understand exactly what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, and look, we saw from Razzie Erasmus last year at the Lions, every coach could, and I'm sure Ian Foster could go out and pick some clips and say that the Irish team were infringing. Yeah. But if Andy Farrell is picking his clips this week, you know, some of them were very, very obvious that he would want. He said he wanted clarity on some of the clean-outs, some issues. So Jakob Piper's reference this week, you know, will they be watching for the kind of side entries in rucks, the clear-outs beyond the ruck? Players were attached. So, you know, that makes it more difficult because players are off their feet, and then there can a little gap can open up. Scott Barrett was holding Josh van der Fleer for Aaron Smith's break through the middle of the ruck. Things I would do myself, absolutely, no problem at saying that. But you need a little bit of help sometimes, and sometimes in these situations, you don't get them when you're away from home. But we've got to take our hat off and say, look, New Zealand were brilliant at that period of time, and the tries they scored and the effectiveness and ruthlessness was there, and they punished Ireland. And if Ireland make the same sort of mistakes again this week, very, very quickly, the game it can be gone away from you.
Physically, where are they at, the Irish team, at this stage of the season? And psychologically, they go into this obviously knowing that, as Ger says, like, a bad defeat here is a massive psychological blow. But like, physically, they collapsed in the second half to an extent the last year. Do they have it in them at this stage?
Actually, the end of the first half they collapsed. So
well, after the
second half, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like,
yeah, I thought they finished the game really strong. So I, like John Duggan asked me this last Saturday after the game when I chatted to him about, you know, it's a long season, are they tired? Is that play a factor on that? I don't think so, because it's been a different season. There's been lots of stop-start situations with COVID. A lot of the players have been pretty fresh. I know mentally you're still going in July playing rugby, but there's been lots of breaks through the season. So I wouldn't kind of go down that road of we're very fatigued. And, you know, so I think they're in decent shape. I thought physically they were well able to match New Zealand. It was just that little bit of X factor at times, and that clinical kind of attack that really punished Ireland and punished those mistakes. I didn't really see. Look, I think collectively there's an aggression there and a real kind of hardness amongst these New Zealand players, and that's kind of a standard when you put on that jersey. They're not massive physical specimens that they're overweighing the opposition. But I tell you, they're so aggressive, and collectively they're very, very aggressive in what they do. So I would like to see Ireland be a bit more aggressive, a little bit more narky on Saturday, and really kind of have more of a physical kind of fight and confrontational approach within the boundaries, not giving away stupid penalties and stuff, but just be a little bit a little bit cynical themselves.
One last thing on this, right? It's less the physical toll of the season. Some of our players are just not in their peak form at the moment. You wouldn't say Tyke Furlong is in his peak form. You wouldn't say James Ryan's peak form, and you wouldn't say Keelan Doris are in their peak form.
Yeah, and there's no reason to suggest that they won't find their form at the start of the season. Everybody's different, mentally, physically. I would think they're in decent shape physically, but just maybe the end of the season, James Ryan has been out for a fair bit. He's trying to fight to find his form again. Keelan Doris had an absolutely brilliant year. I suppose the end of the season was disappointing for him. Who knows what he's feeling? He could have a stormer this week. James Ryan, I think, is working incredibly hard. Tyke Furlong is probably. You see, the challenge here is when you're you're turning that world class like Tyke Furlong has been for a long, long time, and then scrum creaks a little bit, and you're not as prominent as maybe you have been, or not making those 10-15 yard bursts that he normally does. I think. Sorry, I lost you for a sec, Ger. I think then that you're more scrutinised more, but again. Who knows what they're feeling, but I think that they're still top quality players that will go to the World Cup, and hopefully they'll perform on Saturday, because if Ireland have any chance, they need a real collective effort here and a cohesive effort from everybody. All right,
Alan, good stuff. Give us your prediction.
I'm not sure we'll win, but I think we'll be quite close. I really believe that. Look, I just can't see us winning. I'll find it hard to believe, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But I still think we're going to have a real good rattle off them and make it very, very close. I'll tell you, if
I can't see us winning, but it'll be very close.
Yeah. Well, what do you want me to say, Johnny? It's hard to ever back against the All Blacks. We're in New Zealand here, so saying Ireland are going to win on Saturday is kind of, that's leading with my heart. I think we'll see a much better performance. And if Ireland are in the game in 50 minutes, 60 minutes, I think we'll win the game then. I think if we can get to that point, I think we will win it then.
So you can see us winning?
Yeah, I can see us. There's lots of ifs and buts. But
a million ifs and buts, really.
Now, put me on the spot, and New Zealand will win the game. If I asked either one of you who'll win the game, what are you going to say?
New Zealand, yeah. Oh, that's what I'm saying. Are you going to?
I think what little I know, I think it'll be closer though. Yeah.
I mean, I hope you're all right. Because if it's not closer, it's a bit of a disaster.
It's bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, look, the evidence suggests that we could have kept it much closer. Certainly, the stats back up the people who are optimistic. I'm just still,
If we get a little bit of luck, on Saturday, we need a little bit of luck. We may have, I think we have a good chance then.
All right, Quinny, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Okay.
Enjoy.
Cheers, lads.
That's Alan Quinlan there. Chiefs girl's been in touch to say, I think Ireland will step up this week, but the All Blacks will still win. I think it'll be a lot closer. She also says, I saw Alan on the breakdown. I thought he was great and insightful. It was good to get a different perspective from someone up north. Alan was very articulate and had some good points.
There you go.
Chiefs girl liked what she saw, but also patronising us. Thanks very much. Christopher McCormack says, too many Leinster players. The other three provinces have so much more to offer Irish rugby. I mean, maybe it's the Leinster players are too soft is basically the undercurrent there from that. Mark Dunning says, we dominated possession and territory last week and got hammered. It's highly unlikely we get that level of dominance again, so another hiding more likely than not. I do think some of that is all a bit of a misnomer, because in the second half, New Zealand are 28 points up. They're like,
the game's over.
I mean, come on.
Was it like an 8-minute spell?
Come on, we're gonna go and kill you again because we don't need to.
Yeah,
we're gonna keep some stuff in reserve for next week when we might need it. Do you know? Like there's definitely something in that. Right, so OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effort that's finished here today. Come join the football pod live with James, Paddy, Tommy and special guests for a live roadshow in Dublin as we build up to the 2022 All-Ireland Senior Football Championship final. The show is coming to you live from Kilmacud Crokes GA Club next Thursday, July the 14th. It'll either be a celebration or a wake. Either way, it'll be pretty good. Tickets are €20, including booking fees. You can pick them up at otbsports.com/events. And speaking of Football Pod, you're going to hear a clip from the latest episode during the ad break as the three lads preview the All-Ireland Senior Football semi-finals ahead of the weekend. The Football Pod, in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the GA Senior Football Championship. Check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more. We're back after the ad with something a little bit different, a Munster Rugby e-gaming special. Yeah, that's right, stay tuned.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
This summer, we're bringing you double koi gig.
I just burst out laughing, to be fair, because you've waited so long for a goal and it should have been disallowed. It was a blatant handball. That nearly makes it all the better. The fact that it was such a weird and wonderful goal. It absolutely reflects Niamh Flaherty as a person.
But that'll make for great content for the podcast.
Well, that's why we do it.
For the best insight and analysis from this summer's Euros, subscribe to the Koi Gig Pod on the OTB Sports app now.
Reported in the Irish Star this morning by Carl O'Kane that Conor O'Callaghan is a major doubt this week. It's not a hamstring issue. It's that he has suffered a hairline fracture, and that is the word.
Where's he?
Of what bone?
No details. I've been trying to find out. I don't know whether it's...
So it just said Khan has a hairline fracture.
I'm not sure where it is. Does it make a difference? A hairline fracture is a hairline fracture.
You'd rather not have it. You're up against it if you do, if that's the case. But we don't know, lads. And I don't know. And say a week ago it's a hamstring. Today it's a broken bone. You don't know the credibility of this stuff or where it's come from. All I'll say is I'd be surprised if he's not on the pitch. Unless it's a terrible injury and there's just no way he can tog out. I'd be amazed if he's not on the pitch. He's that important for Dublin. He is massive. Him and James McCarthy coming back into that team. You seen it in the Cork game. Dublin he's a spark. He's a focal point for that attack. He causes havoc for the opposition. It frees up space for the likes of Rock, for Costello, Paddy Small, whoever it is in there with him. He is pivotal. It's the same with Clifford McCarry. If Con's not playing on Sunday, it's a big ask for Dublin to get over.
James, have you ever had a hairline fracture?
I did. I had a hairline fracture of the fibula, which is the small bone in the leg, at the back of the leg.
Right.
And I had a hairline fracture of the radius, that the arm bone there. I'm not sure.
I couldn't tell you.
Biology here. The radius of the ulna.
Drop biology, 3 weeks for Leinster.
Yeah.
With the leg one, small hairline fracture, you could barely see it in the x-ray, but you couldn't do anything on it until it was healed. Yeah. Because if you plant, it can break.
Right.
With the arm, 2 or 3 weeks makes a big difference to the arm if you just stay on your feet. Do you know? Painkillers and the arm, probably compression. You wouldn't be swinging fellas off with the arm, but in terms of pain, you probably get away with it once you didn't fall. Whereas if it's one of the leg bones, I would say forget it.
We don't know. That's what reported in the Star this morning. But they did say that James McCarthy looks a lot more likely to play this weekend. For him, for Dublin to be out without McCarthy and Con would be an absolute utter disaster. But James McCarthy coming back would be a massive bonus too. Isn't it such a pity that we're not going to get Con against Clifford this week?
We don't know.
If we don't.
If we probably will.
It's for me, they're the two best players.
We don't get enough opportunities to see both of these guys go up against each other.
They're the two best players in the game. They're the leaders on the forward line of their teams. They're the game changers. They're the match winners. I think we will.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong. Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh, really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie, we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. Because somewhere out there, there's someone for you. And GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, you're very welcome back. It's 19 minutes past 8 this Thursday morning here on OTB AM, and I'm delighted to say Enda, Lynch and Daire McCormack are with us in their Munster tracksuits. Good morning to you both. How are you getting on?
Morning, Ger.
Good, thank you.
And explain to us exactly why you're here. So Munster have launched an Esports franchise. How do you refer to it? Is it?
It's part of Munster Rugby. It's an extension of Munster Rugby. So yes, it is a franchise, and we have 2 titles in the franchise. Esports is very popular, as is gaming, and pretty much everybody in the audience knows somebody somewhere along the line that is a gamer, spends hours watching or playing. Esports is multiple titles. We're in 2 of them. It's a bit like Olympics, where there's a variety of different titles. We're in League of Legends, and with Daire then and Williams Racing, we're in sim racing, and having good fun. But it's early stages yet. It's a long journey.
Daire, what's sim racing?
Sim racing is basically real life racing on a game. So I have a wheel and pedals in front of me,
right,
a seat, and I sit in, and it's like driving a real car.
And what car is? What is it? Formula One?
No, I do GT racing. So it's like they're expensive road cars.
Okay.
Luxurious cars turned into race cars.
Okay.
Basically, that's what they are.
Right. And what's that like? So you're actually like steering the wheel?
Yeah.
Okay,
like a genuine wheel with pedals, and they're proper expensive equipment supplied by teams.
Okay.
It's a big industry, though.
So the involvement of Williams, I did a thing, Web Summit a couple of years ago with Williams, and the guy brought the Formula One steering wheel. It was like a remarkable piece of equipment. It has like a gazillion buttons. But they pride themselves on innovation, and like cooling systems for fridges is something, one of their little sidelines that they have going on. So obviously esports is something like that too. What do they like to work with?
Williams is amazing. I get to go to real life races, and get to go to the factory and meet people I genuinely wouldn't, and get to have opportunities to do stuff like that, and go see F1 cars, and be a part of a team that will help me through what I need to, and help me with the setup of the car and all that. It's just it's amazing.
So when you say help you with the setup of the car, that's part of the game, is it? You can't just be a good driver, you need to know exactly how to give yourself as much of an advantage before the race starts as you possibly can during the actual race.
Yeah, that's just, it's worth just as much as the race. So you need to really nail the setup of the car, otherwise you'll be in the mid pack or the back of the field. So having those engineers around you and teammates that know what you like and what they like, when you all work together, really helps to boost your performance.
How many people are in a race?
It depends on the grid, but I'd say generally about 40 to 50.
Right, okay, so busy.
Big grid, yeah, big grid.
And how competitive is that then? Is it, exactly the same, so over a full season? How does it work?
So the series that I'm in, SRO Sprint, I'm also in endurance, but in Sprint I'm with Munster. And it's a 50-car grid, generally. Of course, there'll be a few dropouts. But you need to score points. So the top 15 score points, and first place is 34 points, 15th is 1 point. You can also get a point for pole position. So it's, you need to win in order to do well.
And how many races in a season?
5 races in this season.
Right, okay, so it is a bit of a sprint as well. And how many laps in the sprint?
Well, it's 60 minutes.
Right,
so
okay.
Depending on the track, it can be around 28 to maybe 32, 35. So, yeah.
How did you get into this, actually?
How did I get into this?
Yeah, and how long ago?
Jesus, I got into it, I'd say 3 with my dad. But I really started focusing on it in early 2019. I thought I could go professional with it, and this is where it's led me to. So, yeah, quite a quick progression rate. So it was it was crazy.
That is mad.
You've just done your leaving cert?
Yeah, I just finished it.
Right.
Maybe 2 weeks ago.
All right, how'd it go?
Decent. not as good as I'd hope.
We'll see. Sure, look. And so, what's the plan? Like, what happens? Are you going to be a professional gamer for the next period of time?
Yeah. I'm going to focus on this and work with Enda and Williams to really try and make this my career. And right now it is. So, yeah, I'm going to focus on keep building on it, and maybe get into real life racing in the future. But
that's the thing. Yeah. So is that the logical thing?
Yeah, if I could get into real life GT racing, there's an example of it. James Baldwin, he's been in sim racing for years, and he's done a series in the real life version of what I do. So if I could do that at some point, that'd be incredible. But yeah,
I think Daire's being a little modest. James Baldwin is 5 points behind him in the league at the moment, so he's at that talent, he's at that level.
When did you realise, Ger, that you had that? Like, was it when you were 16 or?
It was when I was about 14, early 2019. I went into a 24-hour race, and we qualified P2, and we nearly won in the top split with. So I was surprised that I could even keep up with the guys. I didn't think I could, but yeah, from there I just focused on building myself and just working with people to figure out what to do. And once I knew what to do, I just went on my own and then found Williams and found Munster. And
the buzz must be insane, like.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, when I won the first race of the series, I felt like crying, to be honest. Like, it was unbelievable. Beating the calibre of driver in there is like, it's unbelievable. There's a tenth of a second separates us in the race, and qualifying it can be hundredths of a second.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the top 20 was separated by a quarter of a second in qualifying.
I guess, like, because this must be so, like, all-encompassing, it must be hard to even switch off, like, a normal life to do your leaving cert.
Yeah, it is very hard. Trying to focus on both of them was a proper challenge, but yeah, I mean, I think I got the best of both worlds in the end, so I'm happy.
And so during COVID, obviously everything was remote. Does this happen at some point where everybody's in the same room, or is it always going to be remote? How does it work?
Yeah, they're called LAN events. So basically, you can go to wherever it's hosted, and that'll be part of the series. So there's the ADAC GT Masters that'll be in Germany, and it was hosted at the Nürburgring in the big centre. So I think it's called the Sim Expo. So I think it'll be in Germany again this year. And there'll be all the guys that I know through there, and there'll be sim rigs everywhere. So yeah, it's really cool, especially meeting everybody is a great experience.
Yeah, that must be interesting. It's like everything was so virtual, and like, you know, here you are, you see a face, whatever.
Yeah.
And why did Munster get involved in this? What's
look, it's for us, it's a wider audience. I think it's no secret that while TV audiences are very healthy for sport, they're slightly older. So, you know, people mid-teens to late 20s consume sport very differently, short bursts, social channels primarily. But they're consuming more esports than they're consuming traditional sports. And
more esports than traditional sports in that bracket?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they'll consume up to... An avid esports fan will consume about 8.5 hours of esports a week, and that's not where they're gaming. It's where they're watching other teams play, and they might consume about an hour of sport a week. And that's across the UK and Ireland based on research done in early 2021. And it was not pandemic related, if you know what I mean. And look, for us then, it's an opportunity to expand our commercial opportunities, our brand. Does it mean there's going to be rugby players coming out of this? No, but it allows us to expand how we commercially help the overall club. So the purpose of gaming isn't to drain from rugby, and it has no commercial ties into the rugby. It's just to help support and bring, you know, commercial values and commercial revenues back in the long term. It's going to take a long time, but there are teams like Schalke 4 and Hertha Berlin, Barcelona, a number of the US teams. Pretty much all the Premiership teams now have their own sport, FIFA or NBA 2K. But some outliers like ourselves are getting to League of Legends, which is the biggest esport in the world. And by biggest, I mean the World Finals were held last December, and there was 120 million live audience.
You know, I've always made the point, Ger, that like the first time you're on a bus and the first time in your life that somebody offers you a seat because they think you look a little bit old. This is one of the first times in my life where I actually feel old. I'm like, this has totally passed me by, like. And I loved like computer games when I was younger. This is complete, like, this is new to me.
Yeah,
it's mad. It's
and
like,
I had to go through that initiation myself. I was like you. I loved computer games when I was young. Name all the consoles, I had them. But when we started doing research and realised that there's opportunities and other sports clubs were doing this, there was a real deep dive, and it made me feel very old very quickly. But having said that, there are people who are, like, I'm in my early 40s, there are people 40s and 50s who are still avid gamers and who continue on. Sim racing, people like Lawrence and the guys, huge audiences. Daire's races regularly will attract up to 30,000 views in the first 24 hours.
How do you watch it?
YouTube. They have a live YouTube channel for all the GT, sprint and and endurance racing. So Daire represents us in sprint, and then Tarek Gamal from Donegal represents us in endurance racing, which is 24-hour or 12-hour racing, and it's all on YouTube.
So say like 30,000 are watching you. How is that spread geographically then? Like, are they mainly Irish people or?
Primarily European, Irish and European. But this is a wider audience. This is not just Ireland.
And that's only going to grow as well.
Yeah.
How did the partnership with Williams come about?
We were in League of Legends and we were looking to expand into a second title. And we worked very closely with an agency called Epic Global, co-owned and founded by a guy called Trev Keane, who is one of the doyens of esports in Europe. And Trev had spoken with Williams. They were looking to establish relationships with other sports organisations. He put the two of us in contact, and very luckily we had been chatting with Corey's at the time. They sell sim rigs. They want to build a wider awareness of their offering for the racing community. And they said, yeah, we'll come on board. So again, not drawing on our own resources, Corey's made our entry into this possible through Williams. So it was a win-win-win for all three parties.
You've done the live events before, obviously. What are they like?
I actually haven't.
Right, okay, so you're dying. That's very exciting then. Yeah.
The only thing that I've actually been to is the Williams facility,
right?
The Esports facility. It's actually tied in with the whole Williams racing place. It's in the same complex.
Is it Silverstone, is it? Or somewhere very close to it? Or is it Brands Hatch? It's near one of the tracks anyway.
I think it's in between them.
Right.
It's in Oxford.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's near enough. But, yeah, they have 20 rigs in one room, and then the back room they have another 20.
Right.
So they can host like whole events in their own facility, and I think I'll be doing a few in the future with them. So yeah, I mean, I love going there. It's amazing.
Are you getting recognised? Are people coming up to you and going, "Oh, I've watched your races"?
I did go to Paul Ricard recently. It's a racetrack in France for the real life GT race, and I had to coach the real life drivers to do what I do basically. And I got recognised by a few people. It was a bit surreal, but yeah, it was an interesting experience.
You to coach the real life drivers.
Yeah,
that's class.
So that must be like, so you're doing your leaving cert, and then you are coaching real life drivers how to actually
drive a car virtually.
Yeah.
Did you carry that with confidence and say yes? Listen to me.
So the guys I was actually coaching, they had done it before, so that was handy enough.
That was a help.
Yeah. So I mean, jumping between the two of them, they said there's not too much dissimilar, but there's some differences, of course.
And when are they going to let you in a car?
Oh, I think that's an impossible thing to ask, but if I could, I would for sure.
Well, you've got to speak it into existence, put it out there, and tell the world this is what you want, and it's going to happen.
Yeah.
That pathway is going to become more and more normal, I presume, like that.
Yeah, I think sim racing will really become like a proper entrance to real life racing soon. So, I mean, we already have one case where it made it, and he's Baldwin's actually doing Spa 24 hours at the end of this month.
Right.
So yeah, big race.
And how? So like, say if there's like contacts and stuff in your race, like how is that simulated in terms of your actual, like, or crashes or whatever? Stupid question. I sound like 50
Not
here.
No,
I'm 39.
We won't talk about
that. Do you crash or like what? So what does that feel like? Is it like vibrations or what?
There's proper vibrations in the wheel. Like you've crashed for sure.
This is a point though. He's not in a car. Like, so it's this is the transition you have to make.
Some of these games where like it's a driving game. If you crash, you crash.
So I played the Mega Drive, and then sort of in college I didn't do anything. And then I went back and it was like the PlayStation, and I was so bad at it I just kind of gave up. So that was about 20 years ago. So yeah, so when you crash, you crash.
Yes.
But like when you get in a car, then it's like, I guess that's the next step in the ladder. Like, but this is real. Like,
yeah,
this is like slightly dangerous.
Yeah, like if you crash in the game, you do get like minutes of damage that you have to repair. Obviously, you're not going to feel the G-force of the impact, but I mean, if you get into a real car and crash, that'd be a proper wake-up call. So
what gives you the most thrill in a race?
The most thrill is just chasing down people and trying to be the best, basically. Just the drive to win.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so what's next, Daire?
What's next is SRO Endurance, I believe, with Williams. and then sprint at the start of August.
Right.
With Munster. So
how do you get better? How do you train? Like, is it just hours spent?
Yeah, basically
perfecting?
just perfecting my craft and perfecting the setup for the car. So yeah, I mean, I'll have to start prepping for August soon. Make sure I have everything ready, because last round of the championship sprint, and currently in the points lead, only by 5 over Baldwin. So yeah, it's going to be tough.
What do your mates think of this?
Sorry?
What do your mates think of this, like your schoolmates? Are you like the national or the class hero?
Towards the end of 6th year I was, because people started knowing what I'm doing for a job. So I was quite quiet about it. I just kind of kept it to myself, because I didn't know if it would end up being a big thing or not, like if I'd really make it or, you know, flop. So
just 30,000 watching my race there.
There you go, exactly. And so, Enda, from your perspective, what's next?
Look, short term, as Daire said, it's his final in August. We have the League of Legends guys who are playing in the Nordic League, which is the best Nordic UK and Ireland. They're in Division 2, and we topped the league in spring. We're currently 4th in the summer, and we're going to try and get into Division 1. And Division 1 in League of Legends in the Nordic region it's a chunky affair, and, you know, will be, in terms of financing and all that, will be worked on through the winter to make sure that we can start growing a bit further.
Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck with it. Daire, best of luck over the course of the summer, and enjoy the live events and Enda. It's a really interesting expansion of the Munster franchise, so we wish you all the best.
Thank you both very much
as well. It's 8:36 this morning. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's Joe Malloy talking about following Tiger Woods around Adare Manor on the golf course, obviously. Have a look.
Like, Tiger's done these things now, like the match where they're mic'd up and there's like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady and Phil, and they, you know, and Woods in those has been distinctly uncharismatic and had nothing to say. And actually, it was Mickelson who would steal the show and be hilarious and insightful and talkative, and Woods incredibly quiet. So what blew my mind on Monday, I was anticipating Woods to barely make eye contact with the crowd. What blew my mind, he first arrived on the 4th tee. I wanted to watch a bunch of players, and then I waited for Woods, and I said, I'm following you for the next 5 hours. So Woods arrives on the 4th tee, and unlike all of the other players who talked a little bit, Woods arrived on and was in form I've never seen before on video in real life ever, where he walks up with a 7 and an 8 iron, and he was saying to the crowd, is it a 7 or an 8? And a lot of players have been going long, and the crowd all go, an 8. And he's like, okay, will I cut it or will I fade it? And they're like, because I think he sensed everyone's nervous when he arrives. Everyone's standing up a bit straighter, this odd thing that fame does to people. It's mad, really. The guy's good at golf. Like, why? It's like he's the Pope or something. And then, he starts going, man, it's a lot of beers I'm going to have to buy if this goes in the hole. And someone goes, you can afford a Tiger? And he's like, ooh. and everyone is just like roaring laughing because of how surreal this is. And then some dude just over my shoulder goes, Tiger, will you sign my arm? And there's like, Tiger half looks over but doesn't, and then he goes, tattoo, I've got a tattoo of you on my arm. And he lifts up his thing, and there's a giant tattoo of Tiger Woods on his bicep, to which everyone like roars laughing, and Tiger like just sort of shakes his head, and then he's chanting, what time's it get dark here? I gotta plan my fishing. And he is engaging with the crowd like he has never done it before. I happen to be videoing a lot of this.
Happened to be.
Well, I mean, I didn't know when he came up he was going to talk.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I was just videoing in case, just to have it, on the off chance he said anything. But I didn't think it was going to be a full conversation. And like, I just threw it up on Twitter. It's got like nearly 500,000 views on Twitter.
That's evidently a choice on his behalf.
Like, we see it's because he's not in competition. But this was him relaxed, and I'd say, look, the last 10 years have changed him, I think. It's been a humbling experience. There was another point, the last one as an example again, and this is so un-Woods-like, where Wayne Riley, Radar, was interviewing JP McManus by the 6th, which is par 3. And so they're doing the interview as Woods hits his tee shot, and they couldn't really see where it went. So Tiger's walking back to his cart, and they're doing the interview. And Wayne Riley, good TV man, says, let's see if I can get something going here. And he as Tiger's walked by, he shouts, Tiger's out of screen at this stage, but he says, where did it go, Tiger? What did you do? And it's JP McManus and Wayne Riley. And I thought to myself, that's a risk. Woods is not a generous broadcaster. Like, he could just leave you hanging. And instead, like, and I'm as close to I was just watching it unfold, and I just couldn't believe this. Woods puts his 2 hands in the air and he goes, it's on the green, baby.
Oh, wow.
And the whole crowd are like,
Wow, I can't believe that.
interesting.
and I was like, this guy is in form I've never seen.
You have entered Power Drive.
All right, it is this week's edition of Virtual Insanity. John Duggan, how are you?
Good, Ger and Johnny, yourselves.
That Power Drive clip is obviously from The Simpsons, right? That I think I'm closer to that level of computer gaming and all that than what we just heard. I literally just have aged like 20 years there, JD. This has just passed me by and it's going to become huge.
Loads of stuff pass you by that's huge. Like, it does. You just have to get used to it. It's an accommodation in life. You can't understand and know everything about everything. You just can't.
Were you a Mega Drive man, JD? Commodore 64?
Neither. I was a Game Boy.
Game Boy, yeah.
Every time I've got a big win in my life, I always hear that Tetris sound. Then I got big into Tiger Woods' PGA Tour game, and I was like ace at it. And that was on the PSP.
What is the PSP?
It was a kind of a little console, small thing I got a present of. And I'd be like shooting 59s and 55s and stuff like that. So golf was the thing I played. And I also played Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, probably in my early 20s, and my computer melted. Actually, it just one day just decided to switch itself off because I'd been burning it too much.
We all have stories. Like, I remember my mother, like, literally, like a naked gun, like tripping over the plug. While my brother was 8 hours into a game, and like honestly, like this was a war. And like I guess my first memory is my friends like loading up the Commodore 64 on those old cassettes. Like I probably took about half an hour to just load it up. It's mad where we've come to.
There was a game called Outrun, which I remember when I was a young lad. It was just driving through the desert. That was a really cool game.
It's unfortunate Owen's not here because he's got some story about being like majorly addicted in his like late teens, early 20s to something. It's like, you know, it was a large period of his life is lost. It's like just those like kind of wilderness years. I can't remember the game. A vague sense it was like the Olympics game or something like that. That he was like one of the top in the world at for a slight period of time.
Wow.
Much to the detriment of, you know, everything else in his life.
He could relate to, well, like...
I might be slandering him here. That could be completely wrong, but he will correct me, I'm sure, no doubt, when he's...
The thing with Daire is, like, that line between, like, being in front of a computer and being, like, a real driver now is that's so close that he could be sensational, you'd imagine. And imagine, like, if he does go down that road, I will now follow him because I know of this.
Well, that's the point. To get on to Virtual Insanity, because we should, I hope everybody backed John Catlin last week. He actually went out to 80-1 at one stage, and he finished in the top 5. So you would have got paid out?
You would have, and you should probably be doing it rather than me this week, Ger, to be honest.
I've no inside information this week beyond I wouldn't be backing anybody who...
Oh, this is the geezer that you put up, yeah.
Yeah. 66-1, 80-1, and was like in the lead around the Saturday, but then obviously there was a couple of sensational rounds on the Sunday to win it. I would say I wouldn't back anybody who was at the Pro-Am this week because they were having the crack. Like, there was not a lot of serious golf being played. They were having fun and drinking pints and whatever else. So
this is me. I don't really like golf. I'm not like mad into it ever. But like Joe's story there about Tiger Woods, like that's obviously a big deal. It's like Tiger Woods actually is showing some sort of being a human being on a golf course, and that's like a big deal. And so to me, this is like, how is this even a story? But obviously, golfers Tiger just doesn't let his guard down.
Tiger's game face is like the most famous thing about him. Yeah. You know, like he'd have his game face on for weeks in advance of a tournament, the entire time of the tournament. And then after the tournament, he would barely show any emotion apart from like aggression about winning.
Yeah,
and that is the transformation of a person. But he showed up. Tiger Woods showed up this week and stayed around, and you know, and I think I saw one of the English people. Oh, he's staying in the UK to practice for the Open. Like, is he? I don't think he is. That's not what he said. He said he was going to stay here.
Did you see the Riga?
He was in Ireland when he said it, so we'll see.
Did you see the Riga tweets about going to Derry City for the game?
No.
You should look into that.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it was a Union Jack, but then they changed it to a tricolour to go to Derry City, which again isn't exactly accurate anymore either.
You know,
Northern Ireland flag wouldn't have worked either, so they were damned if they do. And
are they though?
Virtual insanity.
If Derry City want to be considered Irish and they want to fly,
they are Irish.
Let them do that, I say.
Yeah, Riga got it wrong in the first place.
Parity of esteem, right to self-identification, all in the Good Friday Agreement, which nobody seems to have
the
read.
Belfast Agreement.
John Duggan.
Lads, Corey Connors of Listowel in Ontario, I don't know if it's twinned with Kerry, has not played in the Pro-Am. He was tied for fourth going into the final round of the Open last year at Royal St George's. So he's one of the most accurate ball strikers, great iron player. He is 50 to 1. He's worth a 5 each way of my virtual money. He's the headline tip for the Scottish Open. He lies inside the top 20 in strokes gained this year on the PGA Tour. He's improved his putting. He's just a laser with those irons. Actually missed the cut at this tournament last year, but the second round was 65. So Corey Connors is my guy each way, the main one. The other one I'm going for 3 each way on Robert McIntyre. I've got him there in a Shinty jersey because he plays Shinty. Robert McIntyre from Scotland. Obviously would love to win his home Open. 66 to 1 for 3 each way. Loves links golf, so he's been in the Open Championship. He's been in top 10 the last 2 years. He's played in it. Was 13th at Mount Juliet last week. Has 2 top 20s at the Renaissance Club. To me, he's a really good win player. He's got guts. He's a good putter. And I think a lot of these guys, I know Rory isn't playing, but a lot of these guys will have their heads in St Andrews. And as you said, Ger, they will have had quite a long run now. You're coming over to Ireland. You're playing all these courses around the south. You're playing the Pro-Am. You're having a few drinks. You're going over to the Genesis Open.
Or else maybe I'm totally wrong, am I? I mean, it's actually back everybody who's at the thing having the crack. And that's the best build-up. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you're playing Parkland, then you're going to Links.
They were, but everybody who came over played a few rounds of Links in advance, like Spieth and Justin Thomas and a few others.
It's just, they don't want to be too tired by the time they get to next Wednesday, Thursday for a major. So I'd be going with the likes of Corey Connors, Robert McIntyre, who I think might be just a little bit mentally fresher and have actually more to gain by winning this week than other players do, who obviously want to win next week. I've obviously gone for 3 as well in the Barbasol Championship in Kentucky. The lead one is Kelly Craft, who is 45 to 1 for 3 each way, has been second here before. This is a really weak field. He's had 3 made cuts in a row using the top 25 last week at the John Deere Classic. And the other 2 are Austin Smotherman for 2 each way, 50 to 1, who's a really good ball striker, and Doc Redman at 80 to 1 for 2 each way. So these are all up on OTBSports.com, on the OTB app for virtual insanity. Hopefully trying to, after a barren spell, like yourself, Ger, like last week, trying to get back into the good books.
What else going on, JD?
Well, obviously that Irish team named earlier on, Mac Hansen coming in on the right wing. Finlay Beelum and Rob Herring on the bench. We got Daire and Riga, as you said, Johnny, and we have Sligo Rovers going to Bala Town this evening. We got UCD against Bows. We have Simona Halep and Ons Jabeur involved in Wimbledon semi-finals today. Northern Ireland, Norway this evening. Dublin senior hurling manager looking for a replacement, obviously with Matty Kenny stepping down after 4 years in charge. We also have Dublin and Kerry tickets still on sale, which is interesting. For a game that you'd think would be well sold out by now.
That is interesting because Kerry's aversion to travelling to games is kind of well known, but Dublin's insanely expensive to do anything in at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal if you want to make a weekend of it. It really is, and it's
for a family of and with, say, if you got family of 4 going to Dublin, Kerry probably just let's take the chance, we'll get to the final. That's and £50 a ticket. So. You're talking hundreds.
Yeah.
Was that like went to a fish and chip restaurant last night, glass of wine, €14. And I was like, how are we doing this? But this is just mad. Everything is insane. And we either tighten our belts like Charlie Haughey would advise, or we just party the world is, the end is nigh.
Well, I was looking at a, kind of, the way the estate agents have that kind of window of all the kind of the prices of stuff. And I was looking at the house prices in Dublin, and it's you feel like one of these poor children who's looking through I don't know the TV screens of people, happy families and Santa Claus and all that kind of thing, and you're going to the poorhouse. It is just completely.
Cannot get a taxi to save your life to go to a game now either. Literally, you can't get one on free now. You can't hail a taxi to get.
How is anybody supposed to afford a house? And I listen to that sociological tangent and everything. How is anybody supposed to afford a house in this country?
There's for so much wealth in this country. Dublin is a very as a tourist. If you came to Dublin now, and if you're from Kerry, you're a tourist. How is that an attractive proposition?
I've got 2 friends who are multimillionaires who live abroad, and they're both traders, and they both own about 20 properties in Dublin.
Kerry v Dublin on Sunday.
Give me a winner, John.
I think
Con's out, I think.
Kerry are going to win it.
Okay.
Galway v Kerry.
Much to my chagrin, but I'm hoping to get on the hill and enjoy my day in the hill.
Good stuff.
All right, lads.
John, enjoy the game, and I'll be back on Saturday afternoon, of course, with plenty of build-up to the Saturday game as well. Now, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Tune in to Off the Ball each day this week, where thanks to Sport Ireland Campus, we've daily prizes of €200 vouchers that can be used towards membership at their elite gym facility and pitch rentals for your team, kids sport academies and camps, or a family visit to Aquazone Water Park. Plus an amazing overall prize of €1,000 voucher, a money can't buy behind the scenes tour, and a sports team fitness testing session by an experienced strength and conditioning coach. It's all with thanks to Sport Ireland Campus, the home of Irish sport from beginners to high performance and everyone in between. Here we go. Now, at 8:50, I'm delighted to say good morning to Lee Keegan. Lee, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Hey, Ger, how are things?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you feeling at the moment? There's a big game on this weekend and you guys aren't involved. Is it difficult? Are you thinking about the game this weekend, or is it just, it's okay, you've made peace with it?
Yeah, make a certain amount of peace with it. Obviously, you want to be involved. They're the big games that we've been associated with over the years. So obviously, not being involved is tough. For me personally, I suppose I'm getting a bit of time at home with family and stuff like that. So that probably puts into perspective for me personally. But obviously, still bitterly disappointed not to be run out against Dublin now on Sunday in front of a big crowd. So, but I'll be watching with great interest. You know, I think any sports fan or guy would be crazy not to be tuned into two good games of the weekend. So I'll be definitely keeping a close eye and see how things are going to progress from there.
You're obviously mad to, like all Mayo people, to cheer on Galway so that somebody from Connacht finally wins in All Ireland. Like we've been cheering ye on for the last 10 years.
No rivalry at all, sure. I've got so many good wishes from Galway over the years, so I'm really looking forward to that game.
Really looking forward to the game. Is it interesting, wasn't it?
I know. I suppose because again we play Galway as well. You know, we will be watching with interest, and you know, Galway are going really well this year. So I mean, it will be a keen eye on that from our perspective as well, from a team in Connacht. So I won't say.
Do you hope we win?
I do actually. Yeah, you generally hope you do well on Saturday. To be honest, yeah. It's always good to see Connacht win well represented. If it's not us, you like to see someone else do well. Although I say that with a heavy heart to a degree, but obviously you still like to see a team from Connacht do well. So.
Well, I'll ask you about the specifics of the matchups in a moment in that game, because there are some very interesting battles that need to be fought if Daire you're going to get to it. But just to finish on Mayo for a moment, a lot gets made of the fact that you're on the pitch afterwards with the Kerry jersey and the kids, and everybody's like, oh, there you go, that's it, that's the unofficial retirement photograph, that's him taking it all in one last time. I think maybe it's just a photograph of you taking the opportunity to have your kids on the pitch. I don't know. Maybe you can tell us.
Well, it's funny. You know, I got a couple of texts and stuff as well. You know, we're finished football in June, and I nearly have 7 months of reflection time. So I mean, to jump on the bandwagon like that nearly as quick as people do is probably a bit funny. Well, I find it funny anyway. Maybe I've just been written off as well a little bit, maybe age and all that stuff. But at the other side as well, my kids are sitting in the stand for an hour. They're under 2 years of age. So you can imagine my poor wife and my in-laws trying to keep them entertained for that amount of time. So it's only just nice to get them out for a quick run around, especially that they came up to support me. So I mean, yeah, it's just a nice time for them. They don't care about the result or what happened before. So then the opportunity to get my daughters or kids on the pitch is nice. Even to see a couple other guys, you know, get their kids out there it's just a nice moment. Obviously difficult for myself personally and my older family to see. Probably result wise didn't go well, but for likes of the kids, it's just nice to have them out there, put things in perspective a bit more sometimes when you see that, and just having a bit of crack. So no, all good at the moment, Ger. Just I suppose it was a nice moment, and also I had David Moran's jersey anyway, so I was swimming in a little bit. So not that David Moran's a fat guy or anything, but he's quite taller than me, so it looked like it dressed me for 3 minutes.
The inter-county player of the league at this stage of the year, championship's just over. It's obviously a difficult decision. I am intrigued as to the pros and cons of going back for another year, particularly when it's such a commitment, and as you say, you've family, football is football at the end of the day, whereas at the same time you were in an All-Ireland final last year and it could be your one last chance. So there must be a lot in your mind as well in terms of weighing it up, even in July.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to sit here and lie about that. Of course, I have to sit down with my wife and my other bits of family and see what's best for me. I have to assess my own body, to be honest. I said there's a few of us in Mayo who are on the go a lot of time. This is my 12th year at senior level. So, I mean, I've a good bit of miles built up, and I still have to go into a club season with my club of Westport as well. So, there'll be a lot of hard reflection over the next few months to see where I'm at personally. But also, I suppose I'm at the age as well where I can make it work for myself as well. If it's a thing I want to do, absolutely. Like for me anyway, I've enjoyed the last couple of years playing football. I play with a great bit of freedom. And I suppose I keep saying it goes back probably to the family factor. I probably don't look at it as my sole purpose anymore. I look at it as something that I should be enjoy doing. We're all fit, healthy. I mean, we get to run out in Crow Park in front of 1,000 people to kick a ball about. So, I mean, it is a bit of fun at the end of the day. So, I don't take it as serious, maybe as, not that I don't take it seriously, but I look at it from a different perspective from maybe when I was 24, 25, 26 to now that I'm 32, and there's bigger things in life that take priority. So, I mean, I just sometimes go out there, like we train so hard, he said the commitment levels are huge, like, so why not just go out and play with a bit of freedom? People always look back, the way Jack McCaffrey's time playing, he was very, very happy, go lucky. And I kind of just took that approach last year as myself, that this is something we love to do. So why are we taking it as a job? People will always talk and give opinions and all that, but from the group perspective, it's just going out and try and perform to the best of your ability and have a bit of fun with it. So, but in terms of that, I'll see how I go on with the Westport Club thing. Like, I suppose we've had a lot of exiles in the last, probably it was like transfer deadline there on the Monday after we lost to Kerry. There was more lads signed up to go to Chicago than I ever seen in my lifetime. So so again, I suppose the club championship is not going to start till September. So again, we have a massive gap again between now and club championship. So it's important now for myself personally, and I'm going to take a bit of downtime, just get my body right, just spend time at home, to be honest. I feel like I've been AWOL probably for a couple of months during the year, so just catch up with the kids and wife and do bits and pieces, go on holiday or just kick back and do nothing. So I'll enjoy the next couple of months, then come club championship, hopefully I'll have a fresh impetus now to have a bit of fun again.
Post-COVID, with normal life hopefully returning, and fingers crossed that that's the way things stay, the split season hasn't been in properly yet. Like, I don't think anybody has a full idea of what the implications are going to be, but from that perspective, that little downtime, an opportunity to refresh the batteries, might make it easier to go back next year. If you think, actually, if I do go back, it's not the 11-month commitment, it'll be over by June or July at the very latest. And I don't know, I just think that might feed into players. It might actually help elongate some of the careers of players, particularly at your stage.
Ger, don't write me off either.
I'm trying to do the opposite.
You are done.
No, I do. I think I agree. No, and I've thought about that as well. There's pros and cons. For me, the pros are absolutely, again, age profile and years. And I think there is definitely a positive reaction to that for myself, anyway, personally, because I think, again, you're getting the best of both worlds. You're playing football at a really high level, you're getting your downtime, and then you go into a club season at a high level, and then again you want to get a couple more months. And I suppose I'm quite lucky that I had good flexibility, especially in James's time, and that I could take probably a couple extra trains off or strip back the workload I was at, just so I'm more prepped then for league games or championship games and get myself as much rest and recovery. So I was quite lucky from that aspect. But I suppose the negative is then if you're a team that played 2 games in championship this year and you're looking at maybe 10 months with no championship football, so you're going literally from league and then you're 2 championship games, you're out, and that's it. So that's probably harder for me personally. It's not as bad because, again, we got to the quarter final. Leaving probably Crow Park would have a bit of an itch that we could have done a bit better, a bit more. But again, I'm knowing the group and what we have to come back as well. There's always going to be that reflection that we can do a bit better next year because we have the squad. We have the squad depth. It's just clearing up injuries and probably getting to a bit of a flow in terms of performance this year, which we probably never did. We never hit the heights that we wanted to hit. So that'll definitely leave an itch for some of the guys now down the stretch of this year, especially for next year come back in. And obviously with James stepping down, new manager coming in, new voice, again, that's another impetus for guys to look at and see how they're going to react to that as well. So there is pros with Ger, definitely, I agree. But probably the negatives then is teams need more games as well. And I suppose with next year there is that they're looking at that league basis as well, so you're going to get more games. So hopefully that'll fulfill maybe that gap as well for county teams to get more games from the summer. So, but I do like the Tailteann Cup as well. I've actually been glued to it since we've been knocked out some some great games. So I mean, if that's going well and that's promoted well as well, then there is going to be a really good summer of football next year. I don't think we've got to a flow of it this year yet. And like I even hear people on about prices and tickets and the game this Sunday's not so late. I think that all feeds into it as well. That it's just the championship hasn't hit the heights that we probably are used to so far.
Yeah, and maybe that'll happen this weekend. One last thing: when James stepped away, did he do it straight away? Did you guys know straight away that was the end, or was it a bit of a surprise that it happened so quickly the day after? What was that? How did it all unfold?
No, we didn't know straight away. I suppose we had a good chat after the game in the change room, and we just kind of reflected on the game itself and just probably looked at quarter three in particularly, where we got back to a point to carry and I kicked about between four wides and dropped short balls, and that was a killer for us then. And I suppose Kerry just picked us off in quarter four, and the game was a bit of a dead rubber at that stage. So, but nothing about retirements or anything. Like I suppose, like everyone else, James just mentioned he just wanted when he said a bit of time to reflect. I didn't know it was going to be a day time to reflect, but you know his term was up, so his 4 years were done. So probably in the back of a lot of our minds, James was probably done, and we never heard James talk about doing the next year either. So I mean, like the older guys, well, James has a big family at home, big job as well. So like that's taken up a lot of his time, been involved with us. So I mean, from family work wise, I'm sure he's under a lot of pressure from that side of things as well. So probably for James, he was happy with his four-year term. Obviously, we're going to miss him terribly. Like I love my time with James, both 4 years, the first phase, and then 4 years second phase. And I suppose James again brought us to two All-Ireland finals, a semi-final, league final. So positives, as the negatives, not winning them. But I mean, you have to look at the progression we've made under James in phase two in terms of who he's brought through and the personnel that he's brought in, and that comes from what we lost from phase one with James, like the Christy Barretts of this world, Keith Aikens, Colin Boyle, all these guys, to bringing in the likes of Tommy Conroy, Ryan, Matt Iran. So I mean, Mayo is in a good spot in terms of personnel and football, but obviously to see James go was still very sad, because again, for me anyway, I've grown up with him probably through most of my Mayo career. So
you saw as well, like German. So we German O'Sullivan on yesterday, and you know, I guess their Cork reign sort of ended when you see the county board like kind of in its statement saying like they can hold their heads high. Then that obviously kind of means that some people will argue the otherwise. Like, have you sympathy for managers? Like I'm thinking back to last year when you've like this personalised, almost if not abuse, like extreme criticism of a manager and a particular player or particular players in an inter-county game that is still effectively like they're doing it as well as a day job, and you get this in national papers and so on, and the scrutiny and that's hard to be able to deal with. Like you must have a lot of sympathy for him.
I do, but I suppose, like James always says, it's funny, like, Joe, when you're in the bubble, especially in Mayo football, like there is always going to be a lot of external factors in terms of talk and media and bits like that, and it does come with the territory to a degree. Now, I don't agree with it, but I think you have to accept it to some extent. But it's funny, when James always talks, it was always, to us anyway, it was always about being in that bubble. And I think James knew firsthand as well what's out there, what the word is. And particularly in a football mad country like Mayo, there's always going to be a diverse opinion, regardless if you're winning games or losing games. They're never going to be happy with certain aspects of what we do or what we don't do. So listen, that comes with the territory, very much so. But the great thing about James is, and I think I remember listening to Colin Boyne there last week, he mentioned that it's funny, when we went away with games for weekends, it just felt like James had us just in a bubble to ourselves, and it didn't matter what went on outside that. So that was the key thing that we took away, James, is that he had us believing that weekend that we're going to win. Didn't matter if we're playing a Kerry, a Dublin, Tyrone. It was just a weekend that we got to spend together, knowing that we're going to a big match full of confidence, because James gives that belief. But I think the backlash probably from last year's final was quite tough, more so because, again, I suppose we've been in a lot of finals, but like there was a massive backlash, which I'm a weirdo. Sometimes I just tune out, to be honest. I don't care really what people say. I know that's probably a bit harsh, but you know, I don't get caught up in the whole muddle of, oh, you should have done this, you know, that. Tyrone beat us last year because they're better. We need to do certain things better to win it. We didn't, end the story. I'm very much a closed book, black and white. If you don't score more than your opponent, then you don't deserve to win. That's just the nature of sport. So for me, I totally switch off then after it. I just don't see the need to get caught up in all that. I don't know how to put it.
Circus.
Negativity, because it can be a circus. It is. And if you get wrapped up in that, then you're going to spend weeks and months, and it just takes over. And I have too much things to be doing, to be honest. The best thing for us is we got straight back in the club, and it was great crack. I got meet up with a couple of lads, play a few games, have a few beers after games, just enjoy a bit of normal life. And that, like, to get caught up in that circus at Ger is just, it's not worth it, to be honest. And I say this, like, it was a nationwide thing here. It just took over, like, and I mean, it's just too much important stuff in life to be getting caught up in just one game, and that's just the way I think about it.
I think it feels like Mayo suffer more than most other counties, because at some point, like, Dublin had the same circus for a period of time, but then they won their All-Irelands, and Kerry could easily, if they were to lose the game this weekend, you could see that circus making a comeback in Kerry. Like, the rumours around the Kerry football team in advance of the game with you guys in particular were off the charts. They're a bit more controlled this week for whatever reason. I don't know what the difference is. Maybe
it's Dublin. It's a Dublin game, because I think in Kerry they probably see us as maybe the game they wanted. Although we target that game to win, absolutely. But I think with the Dublin game, it's probably they're particularly supporters probably see it as a 50-50 kind of game, because again you have to look at the Kerry Dublin supposedly rivalry, and I can't call it rivalry yet because it was similar to us in Dublin. We hadn't beaten Dublin since 12. Kerry haven't beaten Dublin since 09 championship. So until they get that monkey at their back, they're going to be judged on that probably from the Dublin game aspect.
What defeat were you lowest after as a Mayo player so far?
17 All-Ireland.
So, like, why would is last year then that you're just at a different place in your life? Because last year you're kind of fairly heavy favourites actually, and like, I mean, there are a lot of regrets there. So what had changed in the 4 years?
I think the answer for me is just different perspective of life. It's funny what kids can do to you, like, as in, it's just your outlook of life it's just totally different. And I know that sounds mad, like, and I was like, just to clarify, I was still very low after the game last year because obviously we want to win it, but my focus has to change quite fast going home. I don't have the 5 days of drinking to make up for it or whatever, or to sit in a dark corner and cry about it. I just have to be a grown up about it, and get back to my day-to-day routine. Is the kids are important. My wife needs help at home. There's other things that I need to get back to work. Like, I can't feed my kids without money coming in. Like, so I mean, I have to do well at my job as well to make sure that there's an income, price of life, all this kind of stuff kicks in. Where in 17, I didn't have that. I suppose the real life stuff going on, is in, like, I didn't have a house built. I didn't have kids. I wasn't married. I was with my partner, absolutely. But I mean, our focus was football, and we could go and enjoy it after. But I just think we're in a different place then, where, as I mentioned earlier, my probably more of my focus was switched to football at that time, where now it takes a backward step now, and the kids and all that, the house take more priority. So that's probably the difference between 17 then to last year. But no defeat gets any easier after All-Ireland. It is very difficult. You see the group, and as disappointed and inconsolable as they are, but I suppose I've been around long enough now to help those guys, the younger guys. So I knew what was coming once the final whistle went. So for me to kind of, I suppose, react the way I was in 17 when I was down the ground crying versus last year, where you just have to accept it. Sometimes the reality of life is you don't get that Cinderella story. You have to be realistic about it. And Tyrone were just better than us last year, and I know that's very hard to hear, but they were, and they just did more better stuff than us on the day. Where in 17, I just thought we put in a brilliant game plan, did nearly everything right, bar kick that final score. So it's just the little inches, the little nuggets that get you over the line, and unfortunately we just haven't got there yet. I still believe fully that they will get there. There's no issue with that, but that's the difference between probably 17. Where
they or we know it's got to be we.
We. Sorry. Yeah. We. I meant we.
You still have a chance next year. Like Mayo are not far off. People will just write them off. You're not actually far off in an open championship. So it's got to be we. I think for you anyway.
Sorry, I meant we. Apologies, I corrected myself. It's just I don't want the perception out there. So, well, like that's
he said they.
Apologies, I meant we me included. But like the perception out there is like, well, like this, our age profile is very good. Like, there's only a few of us that are in our 30s. Like, so I mean, the profile is quite good age-wise in Mayo, and then the talent come through is very good. Like, even our minors and all our finalists this Friday, you have another 4 or 5 guys that could accelerate from that time the next 2 or 3 years to be brought up to the group. You have the 20s that were in a Connacht final this year, granted didn't win, but again, we have guys that are doing their stuff underage, so that's only boding well for what we need in the future. So, and then you have the likes of Tommy injured this year, Ryan didn't get enough game time championship, guys just to get a run of form. I mean, there is ample opportunities for us there to progress again next year, granted that we just get our performance a bit higher, and probably from especially probably from the before league final, it was very much stop-start because we had a lot of injuries going on. Not that it's an excuse, there's no excuse for that, but I mean, it was very hard to get into a flow of getting a team picked week in, week out because we weren't sure if Guy was going to be available from injury or what his situation was. So I don't think, I do agree with you, I don't think we're far away at all, just getting that extra % or two right next year.
The games this weekend, to get your thoughts on that briefly, right? The Star, I think, reported that there's a hairline fracture issue. We don't know which part of his body for Conor Callaghan. But if that's the case and if he's missing, that's big enough to swing this game back in Kerry's favour. Or is it? Is he that important to Dublin at the moment, do you think?
I believe he is, absolutely. I think the difference in Dublin's performance, I don't even look at Dublin's league performance. I don't think that even comes into play. I just think if you look at, I know, and again, Leinster, it can be a bit of a dead rubber as well, but if you look at the difference the way Dublin played with Con playing and James McCarthy, they're different beasts altogether. So I do think it's a huge factor going into Sunday's game. And no more than David Clifford playing Sunday. I know he got all clear today. So you're talking about guys of that quality that are going to bring probably the extra % or two that I was mentioned earlier to get them over the line. So it probably does give Kerry the upper hand. But the only thing is, Dublin know how to be Kerry, and they've done it for so long. So again, if Con is there or not, they'll prep for that well. I think with Con playing for Dublin, they were far more direct in what they were doing. Then they play against Cork, I felt they went back to a little bit of default. It probably, again, not to mention, but their league form, they were kind of playing around the edges a little bit. But with Con there, he gives them a huge focal point. And especially, I think as well, the way Tyke Morley sets up for Kerry, he does drop back a lot. So if Con plays, that nearly occupies two lads, and it gives the likes of Kieran Kilkenny or some of these guys a bit more free time on the ball.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about here. One of these injuries, because the season is so condensed and it's knockout at the weekend, one of these injuries can actually decide the destination of the title this year. Speaking of Dublin, I think Mossy Quinn did the last game for us here, and in the aftermath of it, he was saying that, in his opinion, you're now going down as the greatest Mayo footballer of all time. You know, we were saying earlier, Irish people are not great at taking compliments, so we're going to embarrass you here with this. But is something like that a motivation for you to keep going and continue to drive standards, that you're in that bracket and you're in that conversation?
Thanks, Mossy. Geez, I suppose it's like the Irish culture. We don't do compliments very well. Well, it's good to hear that be in that conversation. I suppose that the one word I did take is standards, and I suppose that was probably my biggest mindset when I first came into Mayo, was that I felt that our standards weren't there. And I was quite young when this happened, but I felt the culture within Mayo was very much, we might get to a final every so often and that's acceptable, or we might challenge 4 or 5 years at a time and go away for 4 or 5 years. And when I first came in, my mindset was just bring an aggression, bring a edge, and just bring kind of an attitude that we're going to win at all costs type thing. And I was lucky that I wasn't the only one that came through that group. There was a core group that came through at the same time, and we're all nearly on the same page. So I think the standard thing, I love being associated to a degree, because I think if you're setting standards, guys that come from years after us follow that standard. So to be in that kind of conversation bracket, I love more so than probably even calling the greatest of whatever it is, to be honest. I think if I once I got my standards right and my mindset right for the group going forward, and they respect that, and I think they do, I think that's a greater appreciation to myself personally than anything else.
Yeah, I've no doubt whatever happens next, the phone call will be made fairly early on to try and get you on board for next season, and it sounds like you're relatively open to that, to be honest, at this stage. So last question for you here. The Tailteann Cup, you said you've been glued to it. What's going to happen in the final? Because this is one of those very close 50-50 games, hard to call.
Yeah, I suppose the thing I was kind of laughing at was the Sligo-Cavan game, and particularly semi-final, is that, and Cavan are rightly massive favourites, but I love the way, and I know Tony McEntee well, obviously been involved. I think that underdog type thing suits him very well, and I think it showed a lot of vulnerabilities in Cavan's game plan. And then obviously the flip side then is, I think Westmeath are hugely impressive against Offaly, although Offaly be very disappointed with themselves. I know I was very intrigued at how Ronan O'Toole played the last day. Excuse me, I played against him in a league game last year, and again, he was very impressive in that game. So I think it's going to be a really intriguing game. I still think Cavan, probably based on where they've come from and the group of players they have, they probably have enough experience to get over the line. The way Gareth McKernan is playing, and they just seem I don't just with those teams are very hard to break down in Croke Park. So I do have a feeling Cavan will probably nip them, and I have to say that because I grew up in Cavan as well. So I don't want to be vilified totally. But I honestly been glued to. I think the game's been cracking. To be honest, I think it's the only thing I'd love to see with the Taoiseach Cup is instead of provincial or regional draws, I'd just love to see an open draw. I think some of the games again would be absolutely insanely good. Like I didn't like the regional draws. I just think it threw up too many similar teams playing each other in provincial. I think if you had an open draw, you'd be looking at teams that have never come across each other, playing totally different style and brands of football. And I think you get some absolute crackers games. So I think that would be definitely a helpful addition to the Taoiseach Cup next year. But I think the final's going to be really good on Saturday. And I love the way I think it does need more highlighting and promotional avenues as well. I think like we're looking at some of the best players in the country playing this in these games. So I think it's really important we get the right information to the Taoiseach Cup, but it also give more appeal to the people as well. And I hope a good few people go to the game as hard to see what's on show and what's on offer. Because it's as big a game as the semi-finals, essentially, because the prize is they're back in Sam Maguire next year. So, I mean, that's a huge motivation for those two teams.
100%. Lee, enjoy whatever's next. And thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a nice day, okay?
It's Lee Keegan there. Interesting stuff. I think he's dead right about the Tailteann Cup as well, by the way. 15 minutes.
Great to hear that.
Yeah, he's coming back next year.
100%, yeah. Just still not entirely sure he's supporting Galway to win the All-Ireland, though. It's like I'll be intrigued by the game. I'll be watching the game. I'll be very interested in the game. Mayo people, like they've made like a million trips to Croke Park. We like haven't at all since 2001. We won like one game afterwards in 17. So we just went through a famine. Don't really know Croke Park that well anymore, and we might just rock up and do it just like that. Then again, we might not. But it is interesting. Galway Mayo stuff, like some people love Mayo in Galway, some people don't really love Mayo, and it is what it is.
It's what it is.
Connacht haven't done it in a long time.
OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish today. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio today. You can listen to OTB Sports Radio on the Sports app or on your smart speaker. Just say OTB or Alexa, play OTB Sports Radio, and away you go. OTB Gold at 1 o'clock is Ray Boom Boom Mancini. If you haven't heard that interview, it's sensational. That's at 1. State of the Union is Keith Wood's rugby show. Retro Panel is preparing for the boxing ring, and OTB Gold is Jerry Eisenberg talking about Muhammad Ali. And then the show is live tonight from 7 with Nathan Murphy in the hot seat. You can follow us on our social channels, subscribe on YouTube, and you can get the latest on our podcast network as well. After these, we're going to continue our build-up to the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship semi-finals, this time focusing on the Dubs alongside former Dublin footballer Ger Brennan. See you then.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Marginal gains? XG? Top speed? Recovery? What's it all about? Want to improve but don't know where to start? With more data than ever now available, OTB Sports have teamed up with Whoop to cut through the noise and help you raise your game, no matter the sport. OTB Sports are delivering the metrics that matter. Meaningful metrics in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. See whoop.com for more. Follow OTB Sports social channels for the best insights and stats this season.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
17 minutes past 9, you're watching OTB AM this morning. Now, we're delighted to be joined by former Dublin minor footballer Ger Brennan as he previews the Electric Ireland GAA Minor Football Championship. It's between Galway and Mayo on Friday, July the 8th. That's tomorrow. Tickets for the match, which throws in at 7:15pm in Dr. Hyde Park, are available for purchase at ga.ie/tickets. TG Carr will air the match live with coverage starting at 6:45pm. Ger, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Ger, good morning. All good. How's things with you?
Yeah, pretty good. If the minor football final is anything like the minor hurling final with the full house at Nolan Park, then we're in for a bit of a cracker.
I think it is going to be close to a full house. There seems to be huge interest in these minor games, and I'm just thinking back to 2003, Ger, we lost out to Lynch. We bet them in Leinster, and the Leinster final. They drew us in the All-Ireland final in Croke Park. And the replay was 2 weeks later in a packed out Dr. Cullen Park in Carlow. And I remember the atmosphere was unbelievable with the tight ground and the pitch and everything else. And I think we've seen that in Nolan Park between Offaly and Tip in the minor hurling final. And no doubt we're going to get the same again. Mayo are great supporters, as we know. And it's been a long time since probably Galway were pushing on to try and win an All-Ireland at any grade. So I think it's going to be well packed, well attended.
It is funny, isn't it? Because there was definitely a group who were like, you're taken away from the minors by not having them before the All-Ireland final. And actually, it doesn't really at all. It turns it into its own thing, and it makes it special for the counties who are involved, and it probably makes it cheaper to bring families. And so therefore, free from the connection to the third Sunday in September or the first Sunday in September, it's actually better.
Yeah, there's probably a couple of schools of thought on it, Ger. There's probably traditionalists who would love to see the game being played in Croke Park for the senior final. The experience that brings as a young guy to tie out in Croke Park, it's obviously second to none. But then at the same time, what you described there, having it in a more local setting, a county ground, it brings its own atmosphere, and it'll be a special occasion regardless where it's played. But sometimes the minor final, that atmosphere, the support, the tension that's in the crowd, that can be lost in Croke Park, probably up until the latter stages of the minor final, until the senior crowds start coming in. So we certainly weren't let down last weekend, and I don't think we'll be let down this tomorrow night in Dr. Hyde Park either.
Let's talk about the Dubs and Kerry then on Sunday. Let's assume that Dublin don't have Con. What can they possibly do to fix that in a way that's going to challenge Kerry and make them think twice? Because Dublin will have known the crack with Con, I'd say, probably from before the last game, about whether or not he's going to be available for this game. And in the league, they looked completely rudderless without him. They were sensational against Kildare with him. They were grand without him against Cork. They'll need to be better than grand if they're going to beat Kerry. So what can they do if they don't have him?
I don't think they'll probably go away from their structured play. Ger, what's been evident in the Leinster campaign in particular, probably not so much against Cork. It was a bit, I guess, workman-like v Cork. They probably knew they were going to go over the line, but for me, one of the cogs that was probably missing, we haven't mentioned him too much, was James McCarthy's presence in the middle of the pitch for Dublin. When he plays in that middle eight, James, as a leader and captain and an experienced player, he'll be communicating to fellas to push on, pick up the tempo, let's drive forward, we're messing around with the ball here. And he actually sets a lot of standards and what's good about Dublin. And I think if James is there, his presence would help quite a lot. But I think what we will see, whether Connor's starting or he's not there, you will see the Dublin forwards retreat back behind their own half of the pitch, and they try to break forward at pace, create overlaps, create a bit of confusion, get in behind the Kerry defence and try to catch them on the break. And I think that'll be their modus operandi for most of the game. If they get an opportunity on opposition kickouts, they will step up, they will try to squeeze, force turnovers there from the Kerry's backs. But that breaking from defence in numbers is something that you're likely to see on Sunday, regardless whether Con start or not.
The performance that we've seen from this Kerry team has been different from previous years, where there's been a significant concentration on not conceding goals, and Paddy Calley's getting a lot of credit for that. So this could actually be quite a low scoring game in some ways. These games have been like classics and high scoring whenever they've met over the best part of the last decade. But should we expect something slightly different this weekend?
Yeah, there's something romantic about Dublin Kerry fixtures, and despite the tactical preparations that players will put into it, management put into it going into the game, and if you look at the evidence of how Dublin and indeed Kerry have performed this year, sometimes a Dublin Kerry fixture can take on a life of its own, and we've had 6 wonderful fixtures between Dublin and Kerry going back to 2011. I think the way Kerry have been playing, and I probably mentioned this talking to a couple of people, I'm obviously down in Moorfield at the moment, and a few of the Kildare people, if you look back to Jack O'Connor managing Kildare in the Leinster final last year, he was quite defensive against Dublin. He kept them competitive, but it seemed to me that Jack didn't have enough confidence in his offensive players to be able to push on and ask more questions of Dublin on that occasion. But what he does have now, and with the greatest respect to the Kildare players, he has a higher quality, more naturally gifted set of forwards who will be able to take their men on create overlaps and cause a lot of hardship for their markers. So I can see Jack O'Connor setting up similarly to the way he set up against Dublin when he's managing Kerry Kildare last year, but he just knows that he has better ball players inside. I think what Paddy Tally has done, and again, Kerry, they've only played, is it maybe 3 games this year in the championship? They're 3 or 4. They haven't conceded a goal yet, Ger. So that's testament to that defence, but you also have to look at the quality of opposition they've been playing outside of Mayo, who are, I suppose, a bit of a dwindling star at this stage. They need a bit of rejuvenation there. But outside of Mayo, they haven't had any strong opposition. But the fact that they're keeping a clean sheet is quite strong. It's very evident to me that Tadhg Morley is playing that holding 6 role quite well. He's very comfortable dropping back, giving his full back line a bit of help, but he doesn't tend to venture too often beyond his own half of the field, and he is that bit of an anchor in the Kerry defence, and he's allowing the rest of the guys to take off up the field. And you've seen, I think the Kerry's full back line contributed 4 points from play against Mayo in the last round. So I think we'll see something like that again the weekend.
Obviously, Ger, you're saying like the Cork game, they kind of knew they were going to get over the line, but like, was there not like that first half when Cork scored at relative will at times against Dublin? I thought Dublin defensively didn't look that sharp at all. Like, is that a concern for you? What do you make of the Dublin defence?
Yeah, well, it's a bit shaky at the moment. I fully agree. I think the lack of, what would you call it, bite or energy or decisiveness that Dublin didn't have v Cork, that they certainly demonstrated in the 3 rounds of Leinster, that probably wasn't there. But it's been, the question has been asked numerous times, if you're hitting quick early ball into the Dublin full back line or long diagonal ball, it is asking questions of them more often than not, and it's something that Desiree Farrell and the defenders of Dublin will certainly be worried about. Owen Morchan, I would assume will probably hang back there a bit more to help out. I can see Michael Fitzsimons taking up David Clifford to give him a hand, but Johnny Cooper has also been trying to play that role too. No, Johnny hasn't managed to find that form that we know he has. He's been struggling with knocks over the years, and he's been coming off and on in games most of the season. So that's probably a bit of a concern there in terms of having that consistency in your back 6. 1+ would probably be David Byrne come on the weekend in the quarter-final. So he's a hugely experienced player. Whether he has enough in the tank to start to get a good 40-50 minutes out of him, I don't know. But if he is playing, he will help settle the defensive there. But it definitely is an issue. The way Kerry and certainly Jack O'Connor likes to play football, they're working the ball to the opposition 65, and their first option is head up football the whole time. They're looking to kick it into the pockets, diagonal ball, one hop into the forward's chest. Very difficult to mark. You have to make a decision as a defence whether you step up to put pressure on the ball coming in, but if one guy slips and makes a mistake, that means there's buckets of space inside, and I don't care who you are. If you're marking the likes of David Clifford or Paul Geaney, Stephen O'Brien, all these wonderful Kerry footballers, Paddy Clifford, they're extremely difficult to mark in a one-on-one situation when they have 90-odd metres of width and space in Croke Park, you know.
Do Dublin still have like the scars of the Mayo game and the scars of the league? And I know it's the league is the league, but like when the first 4 games and you have that collapse against Mayo last year, I just like, if Dublin are 4 or 5 points down in this game with 10 minutes left, like I don't know, would you have any faith in them having the psychological nous to get through it? Like,
I would have faith, but I would be worried based on the evidence that we've seen this season in particular. It hasn't again outside of those 3 Leinster games, and I don't know. Look at the Bet Cork, which was, I think it was maybe 3 points in it at half time, and Dublin just pushed on in the second half. But outside of the 3 Leinster games, Dublin probably wouldn't fill you with a huge amount of confidence in terms of how they've been playing. It's been quite incohesive in comparison to previous years, but I guess you have to look at the standards that they set in those previous years. Winning 6 All-Irelands, it was going to come to an end at some time. And disappointing as a dub that we lost to Mayo. We don't like losing to Mayo or Kerry in particular, but these things happen in that sport. But it is a question that the lads will definitely discuss amongst themselves, that, you know, people feel that we mightn't have the bottle anymore, that we don't have it in the bellies. Will we be able to push on and fight back and claw back if we're down by a couple of points going into the latter stages of the game? I think if Con doesn't play, and I know we touched on it briefly beforehand, we're at a huge deficit going into the match, and I think it probably will be too much for us to be able to get over the line, because the quality of bench that Dublin have at the moment is wouldn't be as superior as the Kerry bench in my view at this stage.
Certainly from a forwards perspective, there will be a bit of depth there. Let's assume James McCarthy starts. That means somebody's dropping out. Is it straight like for like? Does he go in midfield and Tom Lahiff drops out, or is it one of the defenders? And then all of a sudden you could have Johnny Cooper in reserve, you could have David Byrne in reserve as well. So if somebody is getting a roasting in that first half from one of those luxuriously talented forwards that Kerry have, you can make a change. From a forwards perspective, that depth isn't there.
No, it's definitely not as strong as it was in previous years. The Clark and Odell is an up and coming footballer. He's still very young. I'd probably start Lorcan. I know Niall Scully was coming in for a lot of the games. Whether Niall was carrying a bit of knock, I'm not sure, but he was certainly out of a bit of form. But I would probably look, and I was half thinking in my head, was Desi maybe preempting what's coming later down the track with holding Niall back and bringing him in during the Leinster campaign, because he wanted to finish with a bit more experience and his strongest team, Ger. I don't know, but Lorcan Odell just wouldn't have that explosiveness. When you look at what Kev Mack used to do for us coming in, he used to cause all sorts of fear and trepidation in the Kerry defence, and Lorcan Odell just wouldn't be at that level yet. Will he get there? I don't know, but it is a huge, I wouldn't call it a huge weakness, but it is certainly a chink in Dublin's armour at the moment, despite Desi's best efforts to try to blood players. The quality of player that we have been blessed to see come through Dublin over the last 10, 15 years, that conveyor belt isn't there in terms of out and out natural talents. The work, the effort and the commitment and the dedication of guys is certainly there in trying to push on and represent Dublin at senior level, but that natural quality is something that you do need as well, and at the moment we don't have it there. If James is fit to start, I'd throw him in the half back line myself. I think I'd probably hold Johnny back. I think Tom Lahiff has really progressed on. He's having his best season so far. He's only had a couple so far at Dublin, but where Tom has improved greatly for me, his contribution when Dublin have the ball has really stepped up. I felt as a middle-late player, predominantly him playing midfield or wing forward sometimes, the game was passing a bit when Dublin had the ball. He was working very hard off it and doing very well defensively, but now he's added that bit of offensive link man play, taking a couple of scores himself, and he has that youthfulness and that bit of fitness as well, which it'd be disappointing for him if he was to miss out. You know, I think the midfield battle, I think it'll be a great battle, because David Moran seems to have rejuvenated himself. Yeah, he's playing some great stuff, and I know Jack O'Connor mentioned in his post-game interview the last day, you know, they had kind of had David tagged for maybe 3/4 of the game, and they pulled him out to keep things fresh in the engine room. But Moran pushed on, and he was playing like to go to 35 at this stage. He was playing like a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
In there, so and Darren O'Connor, I've seen him up close with the colleges, and he's really impressive. I like him, and there's a lovely bit of bite in him as well. So I think it'd be a nice midfield battle, whether it's a James in there with Fenton, but more than likely Tom Lahiff in there with Fenton against those two lads. So, all
right, Ger, enjoy the game at the weekend. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Cheers, lads. God bless. Bye bye.
Said Ger Brennan there. A reminder that the Electric Ireland GA Minor Football Championship final between Galway and Mayo takes place tomorrow night. Tickets, which throws in at 7:15, are available for purchase at ga.ie/tickets, and the game is live on TG Car with coverage starting at 6:45. The breaking political news is that Boris Johnson will resign as Conservative leader of the Tories. So,
yeah, people did vote him in. Is this a big surprise?
is it a big surprise that they eventually got him? The thing is,
He got himself.
As soon as there's a vote of no confidence, you survive that.
Yeah, and then
but the blood is in the water, and the sharks begin to gather, and then they find something to catch on. Now, I mean,
why have one scandals when you can have 24? Like,
well, it's true. It's true.
Comically inept leader, and the British people who voted him in need to look at themselves because they did vote for him. Let's not forget that. They voted for
his point yesterday when it looked like
his overwhelming majority.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's true.
They voted for Donald Trump in the US and they voted for Boris Johnson in the UK. Yeah, like if you vote for this crap, that you don't deserve any better. Being honest, in my view.
I think you've got a point there. So his legacy is going to be interesting to debate exactly. And is there a bit where they wake up from the fever dream and go, oh, or is this just the beginning of? He's just now a gateway to hell for everybody else who comes after him is going to be even worse.
Well, look at the subordinates in the Conservative Party. Like they're not exactly a bunch of impressive individuals, and Labour isn't even vaguely left wing anymore. So, like, what are your choices in the UK?
I guess your choices are between competent people who are interested in trying to make things better and people who are out for as much as they can possibly get for themselves. That seems to be the choice.
And they voted for the latter the last time.
Which is bizarre, isn't it? Well, yeah, it is bizarre. So look, we'll wait.
Great for Irish football, though. Wait for it.
Brexit has been and will continue to be, irrespective of what happens. But
this man literally hid in a freezer to avoid a question by a journalist before the last election, and he was voted in a relative landslide. If that's what you wish for your electorate, go ahead. They voted for him. He hid in a fridge.
I don't know what it's going to mean for the protocol. I don't know what it's going to mean for the North, but it's going to be...
Well, for Liz Truss, like, she has all that under control.
It's going to be interesting to see exactly who they go for, because, at least... I don't know. There is no at least. But when you always think you've reached rock bottom, that's not true. There's always something that could be even worse than this. So I await with bated breath to see the big beasts of the Conservative Party lining up to take the role. And
it's not an obvious. It's like a 5-1 the field at the moment. Cause
maybe they need to have an election. Who knows? 9:36. That's the breaking news. You'll get more of that live coverage on News Talk, I'd say, across the rest of the day. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Tomorrow, Owen's back in the hot seat alongside Dan McDonnell. We'll preview Daire ahead of the All-Ireland football semi-finals, joined by Niamh Briggs and Gordon Darcy ahead of the second test in New Zealand, and of course GA quick picks and the crappy quiz. Right now we're leaving you with some Keith Wood goodness from Wednesday Night Rugby. Enjoy. See you tomorrow.
We talk rugby?
Yes.
Overall impression from Saturday to kick things off?
Overall impression was we started incredibly well. I thought we looked sharp, we looked focused, we looked very capable. New Zealand looked shell-shocked, which was really interesting. And I said, "Wow, this could go somewhere." This was something that was very interesting. And then on a couple of silly errors, things not exactly getting the bounce of the ball, it just changed. And it was funny because you want to try and pick on New Zealand. Now, they're never vulnerable in Eden Park, but you want to try and pick on them so that they doubt themselves a little. And one of the things that Ireland has done over the last few years is put and sow a seed of doubt in the New Zealand mind that they can lose these games, that they've, that this is something up until 2016 had never happened. They never had that doubt. So now, having lost a few times, that doubt is, you want to play on that as much as you can. What happened in that 11-minute spell removed all that doubt. And so that was really interesting. So they got their tails up and they went after everything. They were incredibly clinical. So when they had chances to take, they took them. If an opportunity arose, they seemed to convert it. And so for that, I think it was pretty amazing. I mean, I'd have been pretty grumpy with the amount of guys slipping, because it's a bit slippy there, but the guys weren't wearing the right studs because they kept falling over. So that's something that would just annoy me on a practical sense. But after that, I thought we came back in the second half. I thought we played pretty well, but pretty well under a huge amount of pressure when New Zealand weren't under pressure. And we looked tired then, because you want an awful lot of things to go right and you want an awful lot of things to stick, and they weren't sticking. So we were a little bit overrunning the ball. Our handling wasn't quite to hands, it was to shoulder.
We were just a little bit out of kilter then, and we started looking jaded, and it's been a long season, but we were looking jaded. Some of the players haven't played a huge amount of rugby, and they looked flat. So they not flat, but they were tired as well. Like Ty Byrne, who is like a Duracell bunny normally, he's been out injured for a long time. So it was taking him a long time to get up to the speed of the game. So I think he'll be the better for it at the weekend. And there is always hope, I think, when you come on the back of it, because Dunedin is an unusual place to go and play. It's a quite a student town. It's a very different mindset down there. They're actually slightly anti-establishment. You could get the whole crowd shouting for you down there. It's one of those places that seems to be out of kilter with the rest of New Zealand and the manner in which they blindly support their team. So I still hold out a level of hope for this game, because that's always an unusual factor.
Is 42-19 a fair reflection on the game for you?
Do you know what? I think it was, and we could have scored more. We were held up over the line, and look, the adjustment that's happened to the laws on grounding the ball over the line means you need to have that extra little bit of patience. Now, it's very hard to say that in the heat of battle, and very hard to say that when you've got 8 forwards trying to crunch you as you're going over the line. But the patience and accuracy at that stage just has to be paramount. And I'm not saying that we lost our patience, but the ball got knocked out. Those things stick. It becomes an awful lot closer. But I actually thought New Zealand coasted a little bit in the second half. They took an awful lot of what Ireland had and just dealt with it, rather than going out of their way to attack more. And look, bearing in mind they hadn't played any games together, you're often trying to catch them in that first match. And I was very interested in the fact they played at Dunedin Park. That's a mark of respect, actually, because it's normally in Dunedin, the first game, and that's normally where they're very shaky. But I don't think they wanted to have anything shaky this time, and I thought that's why they went to the fortress that is Eden Park. But I think the result was, it was. Look, it's still a bit awkward. We still need guys to stand up a bit more. We still need to have a discussion around 10, and we still need to see what our depth chart is like. I think we're suffering a little because of COVID. I thought we were suffering a little because of some of the injuries. It's a hard place when you don't have a fully stocked bench to back you up. And look, every time we talk about depth charts, and we do this all the time, we do it at the start of the Six Nations, or every year, Ger Gilroy and I will end up doing one of those sort of lists. Who's in the depth chart in the front row, second row, back row, wherever we are. We often have decent numbers, but if we get a couple of injuries there, we're very light very quickly. We don't have 10 guys in each position. We may have 3 guys, 4 guys that are some that are really good international, some that are really good guys in the pinch, and some guys that are on the extremes of that. So we get a couple of injuries, and when we seem to suffer. So we'll see whether New Zealand can suffer or will suffer with it, because they've got some injuries this week as well into the second row. So that'll make a difference to them, whether their depth chart is quite up to it or not.
I mean, we are massively exposed in the forwards now, are we not? And Bernard Jackman was writing about this the weekend, almost like institutionally the RFU have taken their eye off the ball when it comes to producing props. And he was saying, well, Greg Feek for a time was in there and working on a national development plan, and subsequently to what extent he has been replaced is a question mark. And this is the culmination of really not prioritising this area, because without Porter and without Furlong, and so much as any testing, well, we go off a cliff. And like when either of those two go down injured at the moment, everybody is holding their breath, because it's almost akin to the game.
Well, it is, because some of the heavy scrummaging teams can pretty much dictate the game from one part of the field to the next if your scrum isn't working. And our scrum has been under pressure even with those players on it. And so it's one of those tough elements. I know we've discussed this before, but Wales in the 80s and 90s had a club called the 66 Club, which was kids who they thought were going to be over 6'6" so that they'd play in the second row. So because that's one of the things you can't coach. You're either 6'6" or you're not. So they wanted to target as many of those players as possible. I've never understood why we haven't had that type of an idea, that sort of scrum academy, that we can start building up a lot of guys who'd like to be able to play there, because it's a unique skill set. You need to be fairly squat and big. So if you've got young kids that are going to go down that route, why not give them an opportunity to learn their stock and trade very, very early and do it at a heightened level? Look, I still think it's not a criticism of our system. I think our school system, because we laud it all the time, but it generates in Dublin in particular huge amounts of talented, fit, guys that go to private schools. It's fantastic the amount of players that go in there, but we do need a blend of players from everywhere, because we want farmer types, and we want guys that have from the country. We want as many different types of people as possible, so we're looking for some pretty big hefty guys if we can get them at different stages. And it's one of the big things I have about Munster, but I have it about Ireland too. We can probably get more out of the system, and we rely on school system pretty much too much, I think. And it's what other things can we do? But that's a much longer conversation, and that's something that helps us for the weekend. But I mean, I'm nervous at times in the second row, I have to say, and or in the second row and front row, that our guys aren't actually big enough, that we don't have enough of guys that are in there. So a couple of injuries mean we get very lean, and a 5-match tour on a short period like this taxes every single element. Training sessions are not going to be long or hard, but they're going to be, focused to perform at the highest level. That pressure is a big thing. If you're losing on a losing battle in the scrum, it makes it very, very difficult.
The breakdown has been much discussed by numerous observers as one of the key reasons Ireland lost that game. So Andy Farrell was speaking afterwards. He was pretty strong on this point, and he was saying we need some answers of what happened at the breakdown. We need some answers. He said there's a depth to a ruck and there's an entry to a ruck that we need confirming. Let's say it that way. Once it's confirmed, we'll get our act in order. So between the lines there, he doesn't feel it was refereed very well. There is no job, and you suspect with some Joe Schmidt fingerprints included, there is no doubt that the New Zealand team did a number on Ireland at the breakdown, legally and illegally, and such is life. I mean, they're within their rights to be illegal if you take the point.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. Look, everybody's going to push it in terms of that element, and there are different interpretations. I would agree, actually, that some of I thought there was a lot of side entry, and that makes it very hard, very awkward. I thought there was a lot of lazy walking, almost through the ruck, but not really through the ruck, and kind of putting your hands up and say, who me ref, and walking back out the other side, slowing things down. But you have to deal with that, and you have to deal with that properly. If I was to be critical, and on one part for last weekend, I thought there was a constant load of noise at the ref. So everybody was throwing their hands up in the air. They're all saying, look, penalty, offside, that needs to be tidied up in terms of the conversation. It puts the referees off. It's just, they don't like it. They don't like this constant haranguing. And there's a lot of kind of complaining, and you're complaining because guys are coming in offside, or you think they're offside, and the referee may give you a penalty for that. But actually, when all that noise is there for nearly 80 minutes, I think the times then when the captain goes up to have a conversation with the referee, it's just more of the noise. And you kind of want less noise, so that when the captain does talk to the ref is willing to listen, he's willing to look at it, he's willing to tidy it up, because it seemed to be consistent through the game that we didn't actually get that clarity during the game, and we weren't getting the ball as cleanly as we would have liked.
You mentioned Sexton then, so if there's this holy trinity, it's Porter and it's Furlong, and then it's very much Sexton, and we got a glimpse again of a big game without Sexton. What's the big difference for you? Because I'm sure people are listening to various conversations where the point is being made and very much accepted that Ireland are just a different team without Sexton. So for instance, on Saturday, when Sexton goes off, what things are not happening once Sexton is off that were happening?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point as well. I actually thought Carberry played pretty well. And it's not the same as with Johnny. I think Johnny gives a huge sense of comfort to everybody around him. His mind is streets ahead. It's as if he's read the last page of the book, right? So he's looking at everything. He's kind of seeing how everything is happening around him, and he's pulling the strings accordingly. So he's making decisions because of a vast experience, but also on an instinctive knowledge of having seen a lot of this before. So he looks at things. He seems to have time to do lots of different things. Having said that, I still think at times he's too deep and isn't considered a threat. And at times he has been shut out of games. And but he's still able to make huge amounts of spots and things like that. But the idea of it going that we can only play with Johnny at 10, I mean, we've been doing this for years, talking about this, that it gets to a point of where, like something has to change, because it's entirely reliant on him and him alone. And that's a vulnerability for the whole team. And it's, there's been a lot of players that have been used and whatever. But even when you looked at Kieran Frawley a couple of weeks ago, he plays a game, he makes a couple of mistakes. He has to make the mistakes. You have to learn from all these sort of things. I still think he is the guy who will be in the 10 jersey going forward. So, that's just the feel I have. He just needs to play an awful lot of rugby at 10. He's not playing any rugby at 10. So,
Liam Tolan said as much on Sunday in conversation here. Actually, he said, my instinct, based on the very limited evidence, is that Frawley's the one, and it's not Carberry. If Frawley is the one, he played 0 minutes at 10 effectively last season. He's played however many for Ireland just now. He's in line to play 0 minutes again at 10 next season at Leinster. So if Frawley is the one, then one, Irish rugby is going to have to make its mind up about that very quickly, and two, they're going to have to take some kind of action, because it's not really tenable for Frawley to play no rugby at 10 all next season and then parachute in potentially to World Cup at 10. I mean, so we're going to have to figure this out very quickly.
Yeah, I think that it's all kind of uncomfortable, actually, watching it, and so when we looked at Johnny getting the bang and then hearing he'd failed his HIA, and we all then presume that he's not going to play, and there was a huge amount of uncertainty, well, for us, because we don't know it, because the laws change, or the rules change in terms of those new HIA protocols that had come in a couple of weeks ago to go out to 12 days. So we presumed he wouldn't play for 12 days, but we don't know all the ins and outs of it. So, but I was thinking, well, there you go. It's a great opportunity. I still think it's a great opportunity. I'd still, still think you try and bring other players on to play. So for me, we were looking at maybe having Frawley playing at 10, or Carberry playing at 10 and Frawley on the bench, or and then Harry Byrne getting a chance to play next week against the Maoris. And that means you're getting a lot of use for the players, and you're beginning to see them under a high level of pressure. And I'm not saying we're not going to throw the game. That's not what it is. You have to try and win those games with those players in that position. And Keith, that still has to be the mindset.
Absolutely. Do you mind me asking then? So you felt Carberry actually did pretty well, in fairness, when he came on, and yet you're seeing something to suggest that Frawley is the one ultimately who could be ahead come next World Cup. So is that more to do with still some shortcomings in Carberry, or what have you seen in Frawley, or presumably a mixture of the two? So Carberry did well, but there is a but.
Yeah, look, Carberry did well, but so look, we've gone over this ad nauseum, but I think a lot of players, a lot of Munster players have suffered in the last year. I think partly because the style that Munster were playing, that it wasn't free, and like Joey looks to me, I don't know him at all, but he looks to me like a really free player. He just, yes, there's going to be a structure, and yes, he's got all the skills to do it. But if it's going to be entirely structure-based, where you're kicking it constantly, or it's tied up, I don't know that that's necessarily enjoyable. So actually, I do want to see him play more on this trip, and I want to see him do more on this trip. But we know that he's had frailties with injury. We know that his form hasn't been on fire. we have to see options. Like, so we just, a call comes out that Johnny gets injured, and we're then saying, well, who's next up? And with the guys that are down there, there's players that have been used and overlooked and haven't been brought again. So you've Burns, you've got Carty. I know he's injured at the moment. You have the possibility of Ben Healy and Crowley, but they're in the same place, that they haven't played a huge amount of rugby, but they're playing a bit. But you have to decide that we have players that are getting proper exposure to play, and you want to see what's going to happen down the line. And you'd like it for some of them to be robust, because so much depends on them, and you're looking to try and get as much game time in these guys as possible. Otherwise, you're thinking of what's going to happen in the future, but you're doing it without having any exposure in the present. Well, like these are conversations we were having 2 or 3 years ago, and we would have hoped that we'd have had a successor to Johnny, and that Johnny could be there, and we'd have somebody, he could play or not play, and it wasn't the end of the world, So we're just not there yet. No. So the players haven't quite got up to speed. They haven't got up to standard. I think Johnny is still the best 10.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to play matches to win matches now, but we also need to prepare for the future. And I just don't know that we're quite getting there with that at the moment.
So the tricky thing in there is if you think potentially it's Frawley, well, then he has to start, because we've often said about Joey Carbery, he hasn't had enough minutes. But by comparison to Frawley, Joey Carbery's had a lot of minutes. I mean, he started against France recently, started against Italy in the Six Nations, and numerous games in the past. Like, he is 27 years of age. So, I mean, if we think, geez, Carbery doesn't have enough minutes under his belt to go into World Cup, then Frawley certainly doesn't, and there aren't many opportunities left. So, I mean, that's a big sea change. If they think it's Frawley, they just need to give him every minute they can now, and then you're casting Carbery aside. Like, none of these seem overly satisfactory. But like, are you at a point where you'd say, I'm so convinced is a strong word, but take the point. I'm so convinced it is going to be Frawley. If that's the argument, then you have to put Frawley in for these 2 games, because he needs every minute he can get.
I can't be that convinced, because I haven't seen him play enough.
Nobody has.
The
problem.
And that's it. So actually, if you were asking me, I would start Carbery on Saturday, and I would say, right, now you get your chance to lead it up in your the country of your birth, and you can go and play there and go very well, and you play 80. You don't have to play. You don't have to take him off if he's on and he's doing very well, and you can make that as a decision, and you have to make those calls as they come. But you could make a decision to take him off with 30 minutes to go and put Frawley on. Yeah. And we have to accept that fact, that we have to accept the fact that it's an experiment. Now, it seems like a crazy place to be doing an experiment, but like, we have to make those changes at some stage, because it can't be that case. We can't have a game built around Johnny, and if Johnny goes off after 20 minutes, that there's no backup after it. And we've had a bit of that. But I still want to see Joey play more and play with a smile on his face, because I think he's got an awful lot of the skills. I know most people think he's a very good 15, and I think he is a very good 15. And yes, you could pick him at 15, but we've a shortage of 10s, so we need to try and get a 10, and it's a big issue for us.
Where does taking a good beating come into Farrell's thinking? Like, so you say this is a bit of an experiment, and yet you would look at the game last weekend and say that it was pretty obvious the result was not in doubt early on, certainly by half-time or early in the second half, and yet he left on those front row players, for instance. And I'm sure he would have been thinking, God, I'm going to need them in weekend 2, but maybe another part of him is also thinking, I don't want them to put 60 on us here, because that's psychologically damaging. So, for instance, say he goes, experiments at 10, and it's Carbery and it's Frawley, and things really don't go well, and Ireland take a bit of a hiding. Does that leave a mark? Is that something that is important to avoid with the World Cup in mind, or can a team take a beating like that, understand it was for experimental reasons, and put it to one side?
Yeah, I wouldn't even rise to that. I wouldn't consider ever going out onto a field with the idea of taking a beating. And I think you have to make those changes at some stage, and the players have to stand up to it. And Look, I would say we could have scored another couple of tries the other day, and I think if we had a different interpretation at the ruck time, it could have been far closer. I actually think New Zealand would have beaten us anyway, so that doesn't hold too much. Like, this is not a freebie. We often use that conversation. This is a proper test in Dunedin. It's a great place to play, like a really, really great, my favorite place to play in New Zealand. And there's something exciting about going down there. What's wrong with saying you're going to go down there with 2 10s that aren't Johnny Sexton and still have an expectation that if you perform properly, you have a chance of winning? I don't think there's a fear thing, or there should be a fear thing that you get a beating. If the beating happens, the beating happens. We just have to deal with that. I don't know that knocks us back anywhere.
Right.
Like this is. We want to have a really good account for ourselves. I think when we talked at the very start of this, Joe, my hope was that Ireland would win 1 test, because that would be extraordinary, right? So that's 5 matches. So everybody else was talking about a series, or people were talking about a series win. I wasn't. I don't mind losing the Maori matches, and I know that sounds kind of wrong, but there's lots of players who haven't played some really, really high, intense rugby. That's an incredible opportunity for them. This is something that will build our Irish team out as much more. We blood it as much as we possibly can, and to see what actually happens. I mean, if you go back to England in '98, they went on a truly humiliating tour to Australia, and then won the World Cup 5 years later, and with an awful lot of the players that were blooded on that tour in '98. So, look, there's always a plus because you get a chance to play at a higher level. So,
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Off the ball's the best. Number 1.